evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 16th City Council meeting. If you would please silence all electronic devices. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Shaliva, please take the roll call.
Mr. Beatry?
Present.
Ms. Carnes?
Present.
Mr. Dabney?
Present.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Present.
Mr. Hamilton?
Present.
Mr. Presbolinski?
Present.
Ms. Silvis? Mr. Simmons?
Present.
And Mr. Stimley. We have 8 present and 1 absent.
And Councilwoman Silvis did notify me and told me that she was running late from the airport, so she will try to be here for the meeting. Reports of standing committees. Councilwoman Carnes. Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself there. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of July 2nd. Are there any corrections, deletions?
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve by Councilman Beatry, seconded by Councilman Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Now, Councilwoman Carnes.
There was a workshop of the Michigan City Common Council Planning and Zoning Committee held July 9th, 2019. Chairperson Sharon Carnes called the meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. Central Daylight Time in the EOC at City Hall, 100 East Michigan Boulevard, Michigan City, Indiana. Members present, Sharon Carnes, Tim Beatry, and Ron Hamilton. Also in attendance were City Council President Don Presbolinski, City Council members Brian Dabney, Johnny Stimley, Gene Simmons, Sean Fitzpatrick, City Attorney Amber LePage, City Planner Craig Phillips, Building Commissioner Sue Downs, Code Enforcer Christine Vanderborg, and members of the public. The purpose of the workshop was to discuss an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Michigan City, Indiana, creating Article 15 in Chapter 22 entitled Landlord Registration Program and Rental Safety Inspection and Verification Program. I read a number of responses to questions that were posed at the July 2nd Common Council meeting. There were a number of issues raised by both members of the public and the City Council. Committee member Tim Beatry moved to recommend to the City Council that the ordinance be tabled to allow for further discussion. Ron Hamilton seconded the motion, and the motion passed 3-0. The meeting adjourned at 6:58 Central Daylight Time.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Dabney.
All right. The July 16th Finance Committee meeting was called to order at 6:02 p.m. tonight by Chairman Dabney to review the claims filed since last meeting. Committee members Beatry and Presbolinski were present, as well as council members Hamilton, Carnes, Fitzpatrick, Simmons, and Stimley. City Controller Rich Murphy was also in attendance, as well as Attorney Jim Meyer. Claims review totaled $5,029,595.87 from the Riverboat Fund, $415,179.18 from the Boyd Development, and a payment for the Energy Savings Project, the ESG, $322,068.56 for a total docket of $5,766,843.61. All questions that we had were answered. Mine were answered previous to the meeting, and there were no other issues to discuss. Councilman Beatry moved to recommend approval of the docket, and with a second by Councilman Presbolinski. The motion was approved, and the docket was approved unanimously. On the motion by Councilman Beatry, the meeting, and a second by Councilman Presbolinski, the meeting was adjourned at 6:14 p.m. Summary of the claims are as follows. From the Riverboat Fund. Corporate Payment Systems, $120 even. Enterprise Rent-A-Car, $1,803.52. Fletcher Chrysler Products, Inc., $313,501 even. Global Engineering and Land Surveying, $49,978.75. Municipal Code Corporation, $2,617.76. SHE of Indiana, LLC, $9,172.37. WatchGuard, $5,170 even. Waymeyer, APS, Inc., doing business as Waymeyer, $4,539.97. James Meyer and Associates, PC, $717.50. And EFT payment to the supplemental health care budget, $1,500,000 even. And EFT 20% payment to subsidize the general fund, $2,191,975 even, for a total riverboat fund payment of $5,029,595.87. From the Boyd Development Fund, the News Dispatch, $384 even. Corporate Payment System, $192.60. We Create Media, $14,602.58. And a payment to the Promise Scholarship of $400,000 even, for a total from Boyd Development of $415,179.18. And then the Energy Savings Project Loan payment, $322,068.56, for a total claims docket, once again, of $5,766,843.61. And that concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there reports of other officers and departments? Any reports from any other officers or departments? Having none, voting on the claims docket under Fund 2042 Riverboat, claims total $5,299,595.87. Under Fund 2031 Boyd Development, $415,179.18. And the ESG Savings Project, $322,068.56. Is there a motion to pay the claims?
Motion to pay the claims.
Support.
Motion to pay the claims by Councilman Dabney and seconded by Councilwoman Carnes. All those in favor of paying the claims signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Claims will be paid. Our first petition before us this evening, Ms. Schleva, by title only without objection.
Petition of the Blue Chip Casino LLC to vacate portions of 2 public water sanitation easements in the city of Michigan City and contained entirely within the property generally known as Blue Chip Casino Hotel and Spa.
And do the authors have anything that they'd like to add at this time? Councilman Simmons?
I believe this work has already been done. I'm sure Attorney Esper will explain in full detail. On the other hand, all those departments that would be affected by this easement have submitted letters of approval, including the mayor, the city attorney, police department, water department, sanitary department, city planner.
Okay. Any other comments from the authors? None? Okay, anyone from the public or Mr. Esper? Go ahead.
Good evening. John Esper on behalf of Blue Chip Casino LLC. I'm also here with Brenda Temple, General Manager, Vice President of Blue Chip. The petition that is before you this evening is really the part of the conclusion to what began last October, November in advance of the expansion of Blue Chip's campus complex. The petition seeks to relocate two portions of the sanitary easement and water easement that is contained entirely within Blue Chip's property. The memorandum of understanding that was reached last November between Blue Chip and the city paved the way for the permits to issue and the work on the expansion to be done. The work has been done. So as I stand before you this evening, the two easements that we seek to relocate, which cleared the way for the expansion to move forward, have already been completed. And under that memorandum of understanding, I now am before you to seek formal approval to vacate the pre-existing easement, and hereafter, before the Board of Public Works and Safety, we will provide the new easements, again, entirely contained within Blue Chip's property, upon which the improvements have now been made. So if that isn't clear as mud, I can speak to it even further.
Are there any questions from council members or comments about the petition?
I also have Ms. Temple, who's prepared to share with you the progress of the project, and with that, I will turn the podium over.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you for the opportunity to spend a few minutes, short few minutes, talking about our project at Blue Chip. We're very excited. The project is scheduled to open with a soft opening on October 4th. We're going to be fully functional with 45,000 square feet of convention space. The schedule was a little pushed. We had planned on opening the third week of October, but we're moving forward, and we will be completing renovation of the Stardust Ballroom in 2020. Just because with record rains and record temperatures this winter, our construction schedule is a little bit behind. We have the facility fully sold October 24th, so that's my drop dead date that I have to have that facility, so we're going to wait to renovate the Stardust Ballroom until after the beginning of the new year. However, we're very excited to have this facility. Starting mid-November through the end of the year, we are sold out. I have an awesome sales team working for me at Blue Chip, and they've done an excellent job of selling the facility for holiday parties. We'll be adding about 40 team members to our existing, about a little over 900 team members that work for us at Blue Chip. So we'll be bringing new employment here to town. And what else? There's a lot of things going on at Blue Chip. If you haven't read the latest information from the Indiana Gaming Commission, Blue Chip has had market share improvements for the last 8 consecutive months. That is, we are leading the market in Northwest Indiana. So that's a testament to Blue Chip and my team, and a testament to Michigan City. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Mr. Esparr, I do have a question. The work's already done, correct?
Yes.
All the work's done. So why is the petition coming before the city council now? Why didn't it come before the work started?
Well, that it was part of a memorandum of understanding between Blue Chip and the Board of Public Works and Safety. And the vacation would have been premature previously because the infrastructure was still there. Now the infrastructure has been relocated on Blue Chip's property, and the easement that you currently occupy is no longer supporting and serving the sanitary line and water line that has been reconfigured and is now sitting in another location upon Blue Chip's property, which will, after this task that's before the council this evening is complete, then the grant of new easements will be made for the line.
I know, going back to my question is, why wasn't this applied for when the project first started? Why does it come to us now when the project's over and we're getting ready for a soft opening here in October? That's my question. I mean, I agree that, you know, it'll be passed. I'm just curious why this didn't get before the council until now. I mean, if it was a resident in Michigan City, I don't think this kind of stuff would occur, but
I think it was part of our memorandum of understanding, John.
It was, but I think the president's question is to why wasn't it brought before the council? And
right, to vote on it. Because we have to vote on it. We have to vote on this petition to let the work proceed. That's the way I understand the way the law works.
It was embodied through another branch of local government and under a memorandum of understanding. In my sort of legal assessment, I think it would have been premature to vacate a easement that was actively being used at the time. So perhaps it's just a way of viewing the project. If you vacate an easement that's that's already being utilized, what's supporting the easement? You can look at it both ways, but it's just a different way to go about it.
Okay, well, I think we'll just move forward here. I don't have any other questions, and good luck on your expansion. Very
Thank you
good.
very much, Mr. President.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this petition? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this petition?
Sound out here, there's like 30 people and we can't hear anything.
Pardon?
There's no sound out here.
The sound is not on in the gallery out there.
Well, whatever the janitor has as far as the speaker system goes in the lobby, he knows no one on the council can turn the speaker system on and off up there. You know, more folks can come into the council chamber. There's a few seats here and there. So I apologize that the speaker system's not on. With that being said, is there anyone else? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this petition? Having none, are there any council members that wish to speak on this petition? Any council members who wish to speak on this petition? Is there a motion to approve the petition?
You don't vote on it.
Oh, okay.
You later vote to approve the ordinance. This is
Okay.
to approve the ordinance.
All right. Okay, moving on. Thank you. And there will be a formal public hearing will be held on August the 6th, 2019 on that petition, according to our agenda. Communications, Ms. Shaliva?
Correspondence received in the clerk's office on July 1st from DLZ, their weekly activities report regarding the Energy Savings Energy Project. A correspondence was also received in the clerk's office on July 9th from Carl Riddle, Human Rights Commission, appointing Christopher Lane to the Michigan City Youth Leadership Commission. And a correspondence was received in the clerk's office on July 9th from Dan Heach, the Public Finance Director of the South Shore Line Double Track Project.
Thank you, Ms. Shaliva. And our one and only resolution before us this evening by title only without objection, Ms. Shaliva.
A resolution by title only, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Michigan City, Indiana, approving an addendum to the lease between the Michigan City Redevelopment Authority and the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission for the Lafayette Barker Project and taking other actions related thereto. And this is introduced by Councilman Beatry.
And does the author have anything he'd like to add at this time?
I have a
Councilman
brief
Beatry?
comment. This resolution references a 2010 bonding that we approved, and this actually is a refi, similar to what a homeowner would do to refinance the mortgage, to get a lower rate or lower months. And this actually accomplishes both. It's less months on the lease and a lower interest rate. but you may have more detailed questions, and if you do, Don Babcock, the president of the redevelopment commission, is here, as well as financial consultants. We want to hear from them.
Mr. Babcock, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilman Petrie, and thank you, President Prisbalinski, and distinguished members of the council. As Councilman Petrie mentioned, this is a refinance, if you will, of a action that was taken by this community back in 2010 to build the Barker Lafayette storm system. And our bond counsel has come to us because they're periodically reviewing what we're paying in interest in our finance charges relative to different bonds that we have, and have come forward with a proposal which will save us on the order of $600,000 over the rest of the term of the bonds. We also investigated, as a result of actually some communications with other members of the council, and that perhaps a second option besides our initial one that we approved at the Redevelopment Commission last week, which does the original proposal was a more or less a savings of about $60,000 per year, and that $60,000 per year would go into the coffers of the Redevelopment Commission to be reinvested in other projects. But in taking a look at it, we want to take the action, perhaps with your support, of instead of putting that money back into the Redevelopment Commission, is actually paying the bond off just a little bit earlier. So instead of taking a $60,000 savings per year, we pay the same amount we're paying right now for some years out and retire the bond a little earlier, and it ends up saving us a few more dollars in interest also. I did want to mention here just a little bit, in general, the reason that we bond for larger projects that are going to have a longer term life. So when you have a life of an asset that might be 20, 30, 50 years, just like your home, when you buy your home, you take out a mortgage. So in essence, that's what a bond does. We bonded the Ohio Street project. We bonded the Wabash Street improvements. We will be before you here probably in the August meeting relative to bonding for the double track effort, which the communities on the committed to $12.1666 million from the city, and another $6 million plus from the county. We are responsible for having that payment into, I believe, the Indiana Finance Authority by October 22nd. So that will be a bonding action that we will be coming to request in the future. And the reason I bring that up, even based on the previous discussion here just a little bit, is to make sure that we are communicating appropriately with the council on issues that are going to come up at a later date on your agenda, so that you're not just caught cold with them on the very night that we bring the thing forward to you. So the dollars that aren't used to pay off bonds allow us to do individual projects like the pavilion in the park, the streetscapes, the lighting downtown, and also very proud to say that the Redevelopment Commission authorized a little less than $1 million for work on the Blue Chip Casino expansion. So that $12 million expansion was in part supported by our community, and their argument to us was, we've been a great community supporter. How about allowing us to use some of the new tax increment towards our project? So we are constantly juggling doing longer term projects and bonding versus short term pay as you go kind of things, just as you do at your very own home. Right? If the mortgage is too big on the house, you can't afford the car, you can't go out for dinner. If the mortgage is too small, maybe you can invest in your children, I suppose, or put some money away into something else. So a long-winded explanation. I have with us Andy Mauser here from Baker Tilly, who is our financial expert and giving us guidance on this. These are big dollar amounts, and we need to have their professional support. We also have Randy Rampola here that can add some extra flavor if necessary. So if you'd like, I'd have Andy come up and give a little overview and explain perhaps the term and the interest savings. So,
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Andy Mauser with Baker Tilly. And I did pass around just a brief set of schedules that you all should have showing illustrative savings from the refinancing. This is actually a refinancing we've looked at since 2017. Had some discussions with the Redevelopment Commission in 2017 about potentially refunding these bonds at that point. They're not callable until the beginning of 2020, and with the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you're no longer able to refund more than 90 days ahead of that refunding date. So at the end of this year, you'll have that ability to go ahead and refund these bonds within that 90-day window. And as you'll see on that first page on the far right column, total annual savings would be estimated right around $55,000 per year. Total gross savings around $750,000, and total net present value, as Don had mentioned, just under $600,000. The interest rate on the bonds would be a flat 4%, but bond purchasers would be willing to pay over 100% of par for the bonds. So the actual net interest rate on the bonds would be right around 2.88%, and the interest rate on your existing 2010 Lafayette Barker bonds ranges from 4.1 to 5%. So that 4.1 to 5% would be dropped down to a net interest rate of right around 2.88%, resulting again in those savings that we discussed. I did also hand out a second page, a second comparison schedule. And as Don had mentioned, we also wanted to look at the possibility of, rather than taking those savings annually throughout the life of the bonds, keeping the Redevelopment Commission's payments at their current level, and then using the reduced interest rate to pay off the bonds early. So you can see in that second scenario, your savings would be very minimal in the first 10, 11 years. And then in the last 2 years of the bonds would be paid off, so that's where the savings would be generated. So actually additional savings from the reduced interest rate and then the accelerated repayment in that second scenario. So your resolution tonight would authorize the refunding, and then going forward, we'd have the ability to look at both scenarios as interest rates fluctuate. We've had conversations with a couple underwriting firms, and I know one of them has the ability to lock in a rate in September that would then allow you to close in November, which would be within that 90-day window. So this just gets the approvals ready to hit that 90-day window.
Okay. Any questions from council members of Andy, Councilman Dabney?
My biggest concern, and I'm sure the rest of the council's biggest concern, is more bonds are floated out there. We just want to make sure that we have the continued interest revenue coming in to be able to pay these. What kind of ratio are we looking at right now in terms of being able to pay that back?
And I guess it's important to note too that when the new bonds would be issued, that money would be set aside in an escrow fund to pay off your 2010 bonds. So at that point, your 2010 bonds would be legally defeased. But your coverage in your north side area, get that open, is very healthy. That TIF area currently generates right around $4.3 million currently. The 2010 bond debt service payments are right around $750,000. Your 2011 Elston Grove bonds are right around $500,000, and then your 2015 Wabash Street bonds are just over $200,000. So that would either reduce or keep the 2010 bond payments where they're at. So still well over 2 times coverage from what you receive in TIF revenues. Certainly.
Andy, I have a question on the 2 handouts that you gave us.
Sure.
Okay. The amounts, are they supposed to be the same? Because they're 2 different amounts on the tops. I have $6,260,000 on one and $6,215,000 on the other one. Are they supposed to be the same?
There's just a slight difference because you would be paying the bonds off earlier in the second scenario. The interest rate would be slightly lower because the later maturities would not exist in the second scenario. So some of the financing costs change, but overall the cost of doing the refinancing is the same. you'd see about, I guess, a $45,000 difference just in the various financing costs
All right.
that would be reduced.
Okay, so the amount of money that the city's looking at saving by doing this, and I'm reading this right off the sheet, is $748,075.97. Correct?
Correct.
All right. Okay, any other questions from council members? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of Mr. Roplogi? Of Randy? Okay, no questions tonight, Randy. You're off the hook. Any other questions by council members or concerns? All right, having none. Yes. Councilman Stimley?
Yeah, just
Sorry.
being the council's appointee to the redevelopment commission, I'm very pleased to see this happen. That they looked at the bonds and got a better interest rate to save money. When it comes to bonds too, I'd like to see more of these get paid off a little bit earlier if possible, and I'd like to see some of the bonds too not have as long as life as they do when they take them out. Thank you.
All right, I see a light.
Motion to approve?
Mr. Beatry, we have to do public comment yet? We haven't gotten to public comment yet. No, that's okay, that's okay. We've had a lot, long discussion, so. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this resolution? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this resolution?
Excuse me. Good evening, Paul Przebolinski, 1716 Washington Street. For transparency's sake, I would like to know, is this original bond, was that for the tunneling under 11th Street that is now de facto? Is that correct? Is anybody going to answer?
No, because at this time,
No.
We don't have
Mr. President.
question and answer.
I asked the question, yes. You're refinancing the bonds
right,
on a project that was already done. I'm asking if this is a refinance of the tunnel that was put under 11th Street. That is a de facto project or a deficient project. Is that correct? Mr. Beatry, is that correct? I'd just like an answer for the general public.
well, like I said, Mr. Przebolinski, we don't get into questions and answers at this time. You listen to the public
Okay,
comment.
excuse me. Can I get clarification from the redevelopment commission on what this is actually about?
Sure.
I mean, for transparency's sake, I think the general public needs to know. Okay,
If Mr. Babcock wishes to speak to this, then he can answer that question.
okay.
Or Mr. Phillips.
So in essence, on refinancing these bonds, when is the payout coming due? The payoff, is the payoff already coming due? And per se, when are those, the bond issue originally, when is that term ending? And the existence of the term now, how far in the future is that going? I think that's a fair question for the general public. And if it would be more financially astute to pay these off when they come, when it's that time where you can start paying them off and pay them off instead of refinancing. Thank you. I'd like some information.
And with Mr. Przebolinski, we will give you that information at the end of the meeting. We have a printout here, and we can give that to you. You're welcome. Does anyone else wish to speak from the public? Anyone else wish to speak from the public? Public comment is now closed. Any comments from the council? Any council comments? Any council comments? There's been a motion to approve already by Councilman Beatry. Is there a second?
Support.
Councilwoman Carnes seconds. Ms. Shaliba, on the vote, please.
Mr. Prespolinski.
Aye.
Mr. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Stimley.
Aye.
Mr. Beatry.
Aye.
Mr. Dabney.
Aye.
Ms. Carnes.
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton.
Aye.
We have 8 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shaliba. Moving on to our ordinances this evening. Our first ordinance on first reading by title only without objection. Ms. Shaliba?
An ordinance on first reading by title only, an ordinance vacating portions of 2 public water sanitation easements in the city of Michigan City and contained entirely within the property generally known as Blue Chip Casino Hotel Spa. And this is introduced by Councilman Simmons and Councilwoman Carnes.
And do the authors have anything that they wish to add? Councilman Simmons?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Anyone from the public wish to speak? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Any council comments? Any council comments? Any council comments? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
First
Pardon?
reading on an ordinance.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this will be held over to our next meeting. Our next ordinance on first reading. Ms. Shaliba, by title only, without objection.
An ordinance on first reading by title only, approving additional appropriation in the budget of the Riverboat Fund for expenses incurred by the Michigan City Park Department for the Michigan City Municipal Golf Course, and this is introduced by Councilman Dabney.
And does the author have anything he'd like to add?
Yes, real quick, in having conversations with the park department in regards to the golf course, just throw out some information here as to why they're requesting an appropriation of $125,000. The golf course is looking to run in the red, and they've given me a worst case for 2009 scenario and a best case as of right now. Worst case can be losing up to $119,897. And then best case right now, losing $84,637. And there are lots of issues as to why the golf course is short in terms of revenues and things like that. For one, golfing is just down all over the country. And then one of the things that has really put the park department and the golf course behind the 8 ball here is, I'll just give you some numbers. 2015, there was 110 days total that were lost to weather. Play was lost to weather. 2016, 134. All of 2017, 135. 2018, 134. And right now, as of today, 2019, there have been 108 days that have been lost due to weather. And so these happenings are why the golf course is running in the red. And these conversations did come up back when I was on the park department, way back in 2009, talking about what we would continue to do or what we want to do with the golf course. And at some point, it seems like we're going to have to make the choice. Do we want to keep this as an amenity in Michigan City? And maybe possibly even think about putting it in the budget to finance. But this is what's happening in terms of the golf course play and the costs and the expenses that are going on out there. And I talked to, like I said, the assistant superintendent, and we were talking about things that could be cut. And like I said, when I was on the park department board of directors, we've been cutting for years. And eventually, you get to a point where you can't cut yourself to prosperity. So either at some point the city's going to have to really make the decision to subsidize these, and maybe even talk of doing this with the zoo. But I won't go into the zoo right now because we're going to stay with the golf course. But these are going to be some serious questions coming along. But for right now, the appropriation request is $125,000 to cover that shortfall.
Thank you, Councilman Dabney. I see Superintendent Keenitz is here tonight, and I do have a couple questions about the ordinance. Come to the microphone, please.
You did a fine job, Brian. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. The green shirt gave him away. I saw him. With the $125,000, besides paying for, I'm sure, supplies and the payroll, are we looking at any maintenance work being done this summer? Or is this just all going to personnel?
Yes, great question. It depends on how the revenue comes in. So this again supports our cash balance. So cannot legally in the fiscal year in the red. So this again, as Councilman Dabney mentioned, worst case scenario of the 125,000. If revenues come in and we do have some extra dollars in that cash balance, we would be able to look at potentially utilizing that cash balance. But I believe we would have to come back in front of the council to use that because it's not an already budgeted line item, if I understand that correctly. So it would be put in our cash balance to make sure that we don't overspend our budget, but we still have budgeted line items that we operate on. So currently this would get us just to be able to operate and manage the course through the end of fiscal year 2019.
Okay. With all the planned maintenance and making sure everything's taken care of.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But no additional projects.
Yeah, but I mean, you and I have talked about it, before, of things that needed to be done out there, and I'm just wondering if they're gonna get done if we don't give you this money.
Not technically with this, but there's a potential. We do have funds, but we've limited our expenses as much as we could.
Yeah.
Some line items do have dollar amounts left in them potentially, but again, our revenue has to justify the means of having that expense.
All right. Okay, any other questions of the council, of the superintendent?
If I could
Yes,
just
sir. Go
quickly
ahead. Go
add,
ahead.
thank you, I appreciate that. I just want to, for the council's and the public's reference and knowledge, in 2009, as Councilman Dabney mentioned, there was a lot of talk about it. The city council did subsidize the golf course into our cash balance, into our fund, $190,000 in 2009, and that did last us 10 years to this point in time. So again, we're in a little bit of a worse off situation because we are so far in the red at this point in time in the year because of the weather and things that Councilman Dabney mentioned. But hopefully, putting the subsidy in, getting good weather will allow us to receive those revenues and carry the course forward a couple more years before we have to inject a lot of money back into the course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public?
Sarah Zawacki, 1209 York Street. So I want to remind the council and the public of two things. First of all, climate change is a problem that we're going to have to deal with in the next 10 years. The latest climate scientist reports are saying that we have 10 years and now less to deal with climate change and reverse the damage that we have done. Otherwise, we don't want to know what's going to happen after that. So on that note, people are not going to be golfing when there is a wasteland outside of their door. So, this year we already have 108 days lost to weather. This weekend it's going to be over 100 degrees. Nobody is going to be golfing. This is a waste of our money. Second, I would like to remind the council, the public, and Mr. Keenitz that the child care workers for the Parks Department daycare are making $7.25 an hour. A lot of these workers are women in school who wish to pursue their degree in education. Again, this is a waste of our money.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Go ahead, sir.
Dwayne Perry, 2206 Maple Street. Councilman Dabney and Superintendent Keenitz have a pretty good grasp of the numbers. I would appreciate, I think some of the public would also, if they did a little bit more dissection and told us the numbers on the north course versus the south course. I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see a little bit of breakdown. Which course makes us more money? Which course is more expensive to operate? Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? All right, any other council comments? Council comments? Council comments? This will be held over for second reading at our next meeting. Okay, Ms. Saliba, our next ordinance on first reading by title only, without objection.
An ordinance on first reading by title only, approving additional appropriation in the budget of the Boyd Development Fund to provide funding for the purchase of decorative trash receptacles for the city. And this is introduced by Mr. Beatry.
And does the author have anything he'd like to add at this time?
Yeah, I talked to the mayor last week about this proposal. The proposal is consistent with what we're trying to do in Franklin Square and the Uptown Arts District by having sculptures and by fancying up Washington Park and other areas of the city. And trash receptacles are definitely needed. And he felt that, and I agree with him, that they're probably going to be used more if they're decorative than if they're not. And Michigan City has an enormous problem with people driving down the street and throwing stuff out their car windows. There's littering everywhere. So I think it's a good proposal. If the council wanted to know more about the nature of the receptacles, I don't remember all the details of our conversation last week, but if you assign it to committee, I'm sure we can get somebody there to answer those.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Anyone? Okay. Folks, if you would please, I know there's a lot of people here this evening, and for the sake of trying to keep everything in order and keeping the meeting moving swiftly and productively, appreciate if we could just quiet down a little bit so we can move on with what we have to do here.
I'll be quick, I promise.
Yeah.
This is a waste of our money. We need garbage cans. We don't need fancy garbage cans. That is all.
Yes, sir.
Paul Przybylski, 1716 Washington Street. I understand what Mr. Beatry's talking about the littering issue. Where are these cans going to be mostly located? Are they already designated to be in a certain area?
Councilman, if you want to
Yeah,
answer that, go ahead.
I do remember that part of our conversation. They're designated to be throughout the city, and there will be extras that will be purchased so that for events that occur wherever in the city, more can be brought out for that event and then taken back to storage again until they're needed for the next event. But they'll be throughout the city.
They're not permanently in place at like a corner.
No, they're mobile.
Like that. They're mobile. Okay. Well, with that amount of money, I have to say this. He didn't even fund the tree board for the last 3 years. And I found that out because I've been wanting trees planted on the easement around where I live and on Washington Street. When they did a sewer project, they totally deforested Washington Street. And I believe that this is an expenditure that some people can justify. But one thing that needs to get funded is money to the tree board so you can buy trees of substance and get them planted correctly. I had a gentleman come out and tell me that the trees were dying because they were planted too low. All right, too deep on that. They have a growth ring on them. So anyway, just keep that in mind. And I think everybody can agree on what trees do to us, for us. I mean, besides the trash containers, sure, trash is important to pick up. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Any more council comments? Councilman Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is there a price per can? Okay.
Okay. A lot of questions to be asked on the trash cans, so This is gonna go to the, finance committee, and we're gonna have a meeting with the appropriate, department that's ordering trash cans to see, what we're doing here. So Councilman Dabney, if you could line that up, I'd be appreciative. Okay, moving on to our next, ordinance on first reading. Ms. Shaliba, without objection, by title only.
An ordinance on first reading by title only, amending section 2-457B2B2 and section 2-459B1D in the Michigan City Municipal Code to recognize that the Community Advocates of Northern Indiana is now known as Minority Health Partners of LaPorte County, Indiana. And this is introduced by Councilman Simmons.
And does the author have anything you'd like to add? Go ahead, Councilman.
Just a name change from Community Advocate of Northern Indiana, which is now known as Minority Health Partners of LaPorte County in the municipal code.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Any council comments? Any council comments? This ordinance will be held over for second reading at our next meeting. Ms. Shaliba, our next ordinance on first reading, if you would please, or by title only, without objection.
An ordinance on first reading by title only, approving additional appropriation in the budget of the Riverboat Fund for overtime costs incurred by the Michigan City Police Department. And this is introduced by Councilman Hamilton and co-sponsored by Councilman Prespolinski.
And does Councilman Hamilton have anything that he'd like to add at this time?
I think the chief has.
Oh, there he is. Chief Williams? Good
Yes.
evening.
Good evening, Mr. President, City Council members. The information I'm going to go through, I emailed the council last night. If you did not get a chance to review that, it's also printed out in front of you, but I'm going to go over that so you have a better understanding of what we're doing here. We're trying to appropriate $100,000 for our shortfall that we foresee in overtime for the year 2019. Currently, we've been averaging about 14 to 20,000 per payroll for overtime. This is a direct result of military commitments, retirements, workman compensation injuries, summer festival events, resource-heavy investigations such as homicides, extra patrols in Eastport, and shift shortages resulting in above normal overtime averages this year. The next two payrolls alone, we will use approximately $40,000 of the remaining $95,000 balance. The first 2 weeks of August, we'll be covering the annual Grand Prix boat races, the ongoing beach patrols, several 5K runs, and other summer activities that cost definitely much more additional overtime. We have 13 remaining payrolls, and if we average $15,000 per payroll, that would add up to $195,000 to get us through the year, which gives us a deficit of $100,000. Also bear in mind, and this, I don't know if this has been brought up before, but the Michigan City Police Department has never gone for an appropriation to the City Council to recoup any overtime we spend. For the 4 personnel we have in the LaPorte County Drug Task Force, the 2 personnel we have in the FAST unit, the 2 personnel we have in the newly created HIDA Domestic Highway Enforcement, which is the highway interdiction for 20 and 94 around Michigan City, and the Operation Pullover details, which combined in 2018 was over $20,000. This year we expect that to get up to about $25,000. So we are respectfully requesting the $100,000 appropriation to get us through. Any questions? I'll try to answer them.
Any questions of the chief? I do have one question. That highway interaction?
The DHE?
Yeah.
The highway interdiction? Correct.
Yeah, what exactly is that, and how did the city get involved with that?
We got started about 2 months ago. The sheriff's department got in there a little bit before us. It was approved through the HIDA, and therefore it's an overtime situation where after officers are done with their 8-hour shift here in Michigan City, if we only got 2 officers on this DHE detail, they can go out on the interstate or the highways around Michigan City and do the drug interdiction, because there are a lot of drugs going through the 20 and 94 corridors. So we work with the state police and other agencies around this area, such as Hammond, East Chicago, who already have a lot of experience in these situations, and they're training us what to look for and stop the vehicles that are traveling with narcotics.
Okay, so every day,
Not every day.
Monday
No.
through Friday?
They probably average
3 days a week?
They probably average maybe 20 hours each a month. So it's not
Oh, okay.
that much. No.
Yeah,
They're
the
not
way it
working
sounded
doubles
you
and
were
stuff like
sending
that.
officers out there a couple every day after work.
No, they'll do
They
2 to
want
4
to
hour
go out there.
segments out there.
All right.
And through the month, probably acquire 20 hours apiece.
Okay. Yeah, I never heard of that task force, so I was just curious what that's all about. All right, any other questions of the chief? Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wishes to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wishes to speak on this ordinance? Any council comments? Council comments? Council comments? All right, this will be held over to our next meeting for second reading. Now, we're into ordinances on second reading, and by title only, without objection. Ms. Schlieba, our first ordinance here on second reading.
An ordinance on second reading by title only, creating Article 15 in Chapter 22 entitled Landlord Registration Program and Rental Safety Inspection and Verification Program. This is introduced by Councilwoman Carnes, Councilman Dabney, and Councilwoman Silvas.
And do the authors have anything they'd like to say? Councilwoman Carnes?
Yes, I would move to table this ordinance until August 6th.
Support.
There's been a motion to table the ordinance and a second. Pardon? Okay, Ms. Schlieba, on the vote?
Mr. Simmons?
Aye.
Mr. Stimley?
Aye.
Mr. Beatry?
Aye.
Mr. Dabney?
Aye.
Miss Carnes, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
And Mr. Prespolinski.
Aye.
We have 8 in favor of tabling and none opposed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Schlieba. And that date again was August? Okay. All right. Moving on to our next ordinance on second reading. Ms. Schlieba, by title only without objection.
An ordinance on second reading by title only, approving additional appropriation in the budget of the local option income tax LOIT fund for the purchase of equipment for the Michigan City Police Department. This is introduced by Councilman Prespolinski and co-sponsored by Councilman Simmons.
Are there any comments by the authors, Mr. Councilman Simmons?
No.
Chief Williams, if you want to, quick refresher just for the crowd, the crowd that's here, and any council questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Real quick here, and I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, but I did print something out that was on the Northwest Indiana Times on July 11, 2019 this year. This is Hammond next to us that also has the license plate reader technology. It says, as of July 4th, Hammond had been homicide-free since the beginning of the calendar year. On Independence Day, that streak ended with the alleged road rage shooting death of 18-year-old George Roman, a young father from East Chicago. Nearby Gary, which is slightly smaller in population, has seen 28 homicides so far this year, up to 25 at the same time last year, and recorded, or up from 25, recorded the same time last year and recorded 40 homicides for 2018. Meanwhile, Hammond has seen 1 homicide in 2019. It experienced 5 homicides in all in 2018, which represented a 61.5% drop in over 10 years. How is Hammond, a large urban core city, doing it? In 2016, Hammond began using the license plate readers, the LPRs, throughout the city that read license plates of passing cars and help nab to deter criminals sometimes before the crimes occur. The program has since grown to more than 60 license plate reading cameras throughout the city, and I know personally from speaking to Lieutenant Kellogg, they also have 3 roving cars as well. The cameras have been credited with helping lead to arrest in a number of high-profile crimes, including the most recent homicide case. So I spoke with Lieutenant Kellogg, and he exclaimed that the LPRs was the best move that Hammond PD has ever made. Said a recent example, a female used a silver Chrysler Sebring with no plate to commit a robbery recently. Going into the data system of this LPR system, they were able just to type in the make, model, and the color of the vehicle, and 3 weeks prior, it happened to be captured by one of these cameras with the plate. This led to the arrest of the female, and she was arrested for robbery. That's just one example. And going into a little bit further information, I know Chief Swistic got in great detail on the first reading, but the data for the LPR information that the MCPD receives is owned only by MCPD. And unless an MOU with another law enforcement agency is written out and signed, that information is not shared with any other law enforcement agency. All National Crime Information Center entries, that's the NCIC, are picked up by all law enforcement LPR systems. So if anybody enters somebody from a report and does an entry on a wanted person or a vehicle, that is nationwide. That will ding on our system and alert us of the stolen vehicle or wanted person. MCPD, such as our detective, can put information in the system we have that's associated with the homicide, child abduction, or anything like that, associated with the license plate of maybe a witness or a suspect that we're aware of, and that will go out nationally. But that's information we input, not the information that we gather. That's our personal property. And just to be clear, it doesn't mean that anybody from MCPD can access this system and just freely wander around the data or look anybody up. The personnel only gets in here when they have a criminal predicate and they're doing an investigation. That's got to be necessary to actually use this to further their investigations. The Vigilant Solutions staff, Vigilant, which is the company for the LPRs, are all civilians and they do not have access to any law enforcement data, only the commercial and private sector data. And lastly, someone brought up the retention situation. Hammond PD has no policy on the LPR system and set up no purge timelines to this data it receives. At this time, there is no state law governing or this type of data can be or should be purged. It's the retention of data that's important. In the state of Indiana, they want 280 days for our body-worn camera video. We bump that up to 365 days year-round for a traffic stop or a homicide. It does not matter when they turn it on. We keep it for a year. There's no purging rules, but with this system, we pay for the amount of memory we have on the cloud. So if we went beyond 365 and tried to keep it forever like this system, we'd be paying out the roof, and I'd be back here every year and being kicked out. With the contractual services with the LPR system, we can keep it forever and don't have to purge. So I hope that clears that up regarding the retention. And if there are any questions regarding that, I would be happy to answer.
Councilwoman Carnes?
So I have a number of questions regarding the service agreement with Vigilant, the third party that would be storing this data.
Yes.
So you just stated that the Michigan City Police Department has no retention policy. Is that correct?
We have a retention policy. We don't have the purge policy. The retention policy is in place for the body-worn camera system.
Only?
Yeah, because we don't even have this yet. And since we can keep this data forever without it costing any extra above what's in the contract to pay annually, we would just keep that in the cloud.
Okay. I have a couple other questions. So I do have concerns about Vigilant's storage of the data. They say that they follow the FBI CISS CIIS data standards. However, they also say that this does not meet their definition of those standards. So I have concerns about the third party storing this data and keeping it secure. So does Michigan City have any kind of security policy awareness? That's also in the service agreement that Vigilant would follow Michigan City's security policy awareness training. Do we do any kind of security awareness training in Michigan City?
Through Andy Mechanic with the IT department, and they put out informational pieces regarding the privacy of data. But are you speaking of between Michigan City and this third party?
Well,
I'm not sure what's exactly in
according
the
to the
contract.
service agreement, they would adhere to the training that you provide.
Sure.
And how often do you provide this training?
The training to use the system, they actually come out.
No, the security awareness policies.
Security awareness,
Yeah.
again.
So you have certain rules governing the collection and viewing of data that is collected by the police department.
Mhm.
And your computer security people give you some kind of training on the appropriateness of use of that data. And by the service agreement, you're required to provide that to Vigilant if you.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, I didn't read it in its entirety.
Mhm.
Obviously, before third reading, we could probably do something like that. I know with security, with NCIC IDEX and stuff like that, with our terminals, with patrol, we do have policies set for that, but we don't have any policies or anything like that with this until obviously it's approved and we move forward. We could put a policy together.
So you stated that there was police officers would not be able to access this data unless they had a
Criminal
need
predicate, correct.
Is that like a warrant or probable cause, or what do you mean by that?
That would be if somebody was a suspect of a theft or harassment, there would have to be that criminal aspect of it, that a crime had taken place or the probable cause is there that a crime had taken place. And that would allow you to go ahead and use that information for the furtherance of your investigation only.
So also in the service users agreement, it states that Vigilant is going to create transaction logs that would show who
For audit.
accessed the data. But it is up to the data owners, being Michigan City, to inspect those logs. So
Sure.
how often did you think that you would be checking those logs for?
We don't have anything set in stone with our other stuff, just like when you fob into the building, we can go in there and audit when people came in, came out, perhaps someone else used somebody else's fob key to come in. Whenever there's an issue that we can go in and do the audit system, but we don't have anything set to do a 30, 60, 90 or anything like that.
Well, that's concerning as well.
Okay.
And also, you mentioned that the Vigilant staff was all civilian, so you have no knowledge of how they are screened as far as background or
No.
anything
No,
like
I have
that,
no
or
personal
if the
knowledge.
data is stored in the United States or if it's stored offshore. No.
Did not inquire about that, no.
I'm very concerned about, just one of my concerns is about this third-party storage because of the widespread data breaches for all kinds, and this would actually hold a lot of very personal data on people that are not accused of any crimes.
It only captures the picture of the plate and the car and the data, so you can look up either a partial plate or the whole plate by typing it in. It does not get into driver's license associated with the car or registered owners or anything like that. It is your plate and the photo of the vehicle.
In the location,
Oh, yeah,
and the
sure.
time that it was
That-
there.
that helps us with
for
criminal investigations.
Historical purposes.
Sure.
Right, okay, thank you.
Councilman Hamilton?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but most repo companies have this, and they
Yes,
actually
matter
are
of fact.
driving up and down our streets currently. Just so
They've been
everybody
doing that
knows.
for a very long time, correct.
And they are recording everybody's cars, just as well as if you go to the shopping malls, and I've seen them in the larger shopping malls, the repo man just working his way around and pulling cars out. So
Yeah,
everybody
there's
knows.
two types. There's the private and public sector, and then there's law enforcement. We have access to all the public and private sector in the data banks. Law enforcement, like I said, for any other law enforcement agency to see what we collect, we'd have to have an MOU signed for that agreement to bridge the information, which we would do like with the state police. But, correct.
Councilman Dabney?
All right, this comment is, it's not about technology, anything like that. This one is simply, from what I hear, in the neighborhood and some of the concerns I hear from the people. And this was really coming from the heart. My concern, of one of my concerns, is that the people feel that this could be used to target. This car will only be in certain neighborhoods. And there is a big concern. I mean, we all know, we live here in Michigan City, and we can see that there is a lack of trust with certain parts of the community, with the police, for whatever reason. I'm not going in blaming anybody on this, but there are people, and I have heard these concerns when this ordinance came up about this, that are concerned that this is going to be used for targeting. And I really think, and I'm going to put my neck out there on this, hopefully it doesn't get chopped off, but I see people here in this audience. I know a couple of people on the council that would love to sit down and talk to the police about how this is going to be used, so we can track, where this vehicle is, because there's some serious, really serious concerns, and I'm dead serious about it, that people feel like this is going to be used for targeting, and we have to be able to see, where this vehicle is and things like that. It's hard for me to come up with a solution, but I think, like I said, I see people out here that would be willing to work with me in order to be some kind of report that will tell where the vehicle was being used and things like that. I can see the wheels turning in your head, but I'm telling you, this is the feeling that I get from the people that knock on my door, walk up and down the street, yelling in the window when my windows are open. So
No, I respect that completely, and I appreciate that.
this is a serious business in a big part of the community's eyes. So, and some of the people out there, they're looking back at me as I'm looking at them going around. I really think we're going to have to sit down and take some time, because we really have to build some trust in what this is going to be used for, where it's going to be used.
If I can add, when we do have a crime reported, especially one of the higher crimes, murder, kidnapping, rape, anything like that, we are scouring neighborhoods and areas and intersections for cameras, whether it be residential, business, or even city-owned, and we are going through these. This is just another tool. Obviously, it's a little bit more enhanced, and it's focused on the license plates, and it helps us kind of ping that information quicker if we're looking for a particular vehicle that's involved in a crime. But that's all that is. I know some people probably have, different opinions about that, or different theories and ideas. I get that, but it is just a police fighting tool.
So I guess my question now is, will you guys be willing to sit down with some of the people that have these concerns, obviously with me, in order to try to, I don't want to say, bring some of these divides together?
Absolutely.
I think we need this. We really, really need this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, and just a comment, Councilman Dabney, that, our third reading is going to be in 2 weeks. If you feel you can get all this accomplished in 2 weeks, that's fine. I mean, I don't know. And Mr. Myers, I'm going to ask you for some guidance here, but on second reading, we can, the second reading tonight, we could table this. Yeah, and that'll give you time, Councilman.
No, don't do that. No, we're gonna vote on this tonight.
No, ma'am. If I could, one more time for the crowd. No outbursts. If you wish to address the chair, then you can come to the chair. Other than that, we're not going to run this meeting like that. So thank you. If you want to say something, you can come to the microphone. We're trying to take care of city business here. Thank you. So what my point is, if you have enough time to get that done, or if you want to table it for another 2 weeks, that'll give you the time to, you know, because now you got to call a meeting, you got to get folks together and get the police department together. So it's just, you know, I'll give you a minute to think about it.
I'm free next week.
Okay.
Don't forget the other part of that is the Narcan unit.
Yes.
It's combined in
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I don't think unless anybody has questions further on that, that's an officer safety issue.
Yes, Councilman Hamilton.
I was just saying this formal public hearing is tonight, so you might want to make sure we at least get through that so we don't have to re-advertise.
Yeah. Okay, but I just want to bring that up. Go ahead through the Narcan device.
You want me to touch on that as well?
Device. Yeah, real quick.
Sure. Okay.
And the purpose of it?
The purpose of it, and Scott,
it
is to read the drugs without actually opening the container or touching or getting that close to the substance. And this is court prosecutable admissible. Really need to go to this because of the fentanyl and other narcotics out there that causes and poses a serious risk to the public and to law enforcement. Simply go out there with a handheld machine. You can shoot a laser through it, and it will identify the fentanyls and the dangerous narcotics. I know it's upwards of $32,000, but if it saves a life, I think that's well worth it. Currently, obviously, as Chief Swistic had explained during the first reading, that we typically have to cut these containers open and get the drug out and put it in the ampule. Sometimes you break it and the glass goes in your thumb or stuff like that. So it gets a little messy, and this will be much more safe for everybody.
Any comments, questions? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Carnes?
In the interest of moving along with the true scan thermal scientific narcotics analyzer, I'd like to propose an amendment to remove the license plate reader technology from the ordinance and move ahead on second reading with the I think it would give time for what Councilman Dabney suggested for a discussion with the community. I think a lot of people here are very concerned about tracking the movements of ordinary law-abiding citizens and gathering data indiscriminately. So I would move that we amend this ordinance, and I've provided everybody with a copy of the amendment. But essentially, it just removes the license plate reader from the ordinance and the amount appropriated.
Support.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to amend the ordinance to remove the license plate scanner and just to leave the thermal scientific TrueNarc handheld narcotics analyzer in the amendment. We have to vote on the amendment, whether it's accepted or not. Ms. Schlieva, on the vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stimley?
Aye.
Mr. Beatry?
Aye.
Mr. Dabney?
Aye.
Ms. Carnes?
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
And Mr. Prespolinski?
Aye.
We have 8 in favor and no one opposed.
Okay, so we're still going to have the public hearing portion of the ordinance, and that will deal with the thermal scientific TrueNarc handheld narcotics analyzer. And is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wishes to speak on the ordinance?
My name's John Avila, 2344 Cynthia Drive. Thank you, Ms. Carnes. Michigan City Police Department is doing a very good job because we don't have the high crime that the chief mentioned. with the tools that they have. I've actually seen this one in action recently at Orlando Airport, and I think that it's an important safety measure for them and support that extra tool completely. That's it. Thank you. Good luck.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance?
I'm Patricia Boy, State Representative, District 9. I live in Michigan City. I'd like to thank Mrs. Carnes for splitting this ordinance. I think that was a good idea. The TrueNarc is a really good product, and it sounds like it's a really good idea to protect citizens that might come in contact with something, or police officers that have to deal with it, and keep it in evidence, and it keeps it more secure. And I think that's a good thing to do. As far as the part that you've taken out, even though you're not going to vote on it tonight, I just had a couple of questions that might be addressed in the future. What about if the person is driving the vehicle is not the owner of the car? They can track the car, but they can't track who was driving. And if they have any plans for memorandums of understanding with other departments, and a meeting with the citizens is a really good idea. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance?
Yes.
ma'am.
Amy Strako, 108 Trunk Court. I also think it was a wonderful idea to split up this between the two devices. And while it's out there, I'd like to speak to the license plate scanner. This is a super dangerous territory for us to walk into in this city. To have this kind of surveillance that without any rhyme or reason could be collecting information about people who are just driving around and living their ordinary lives. Just because something has an intended purpose, we're hearing about a murder or a kidnapping in these very extreme cases. In other municipalities, technology like this has been used for a variety of cases that were not those emergencies that everyone can identify with so easily. For instance, in New York, they used it to scan all the license plates outside of mosques. It's been used to track the regular travel patterns and predict where people might be driving in the future. It's been used for mass enforcement of non-serious offenses, like missing court, like small fines. It's been disproportionately used in poor communities, in communities of color. Just like other policing that happens is disproportionately imposed on the most vulnerable communities. And there aren't really any laws in place that prevent the police from accessing all of this information and using it for whatever purposes that they wish. There's nothing in place making certain that they're following the letter with that. And we've already had some issues in Michigan City with folks in the police department maybe misunderstanding what our constitutional rights are, specifically the Fourth Amendment and the right for search. This seems like an illegal search to me. 60 plus people in a local bar were just having a beer one night, and they all got detained and had warrant sweeps done on them while they were waiting to exit, weren't allowed to leave, with no probable cause. No one was kidnapped and no one was murdered. If that's already happening with a laptop computer, imagine the wanton assault on our rights that could happen with technology like this. That's all.
Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Jason Frazier, 119 Dale Road. I'm also opposed with the license plate reader. And the reason being, not only is it a waste of money and time, we have detectives that can look up license plate numbers, police that can look it up on their computer, call in dispatch, whatever else. But we only have a city of average of 30,000 people, probably 1/3 is about kids. You know, and they're trying to say our crime rate's bad or good. I don't know what. They keep on changing the story, MCPD. But anyways, it's just a waste of money. I wouldn't even consider putting it into effect. A waste of time. It's lazy policing. Like Karn says, you know, you have a breach of a third partner possibly. I mean, this is cyber tech right here. Things that could be, you know, used for other things. They need to just wipe it off and leave it alone, honestly. It's just ridiculous. Thank you.
Sir.
Hello, Kayla LaRocco, 1209 York Street. My only concern, and Mrs. Carnes brought this
Ma'am,
up.
can you speak up a little louder?
Yes,
Thank
sorry,
you.
I'm very short. Mrs. Carnes brought up a really good point about how the security and the training of this technology, it seems that this third party isn't really regulated correctly. It seems like there could be a loophole to where it could be used incorrectly in the future by police officers or by the third party or leak of information. I feel like it's an invasion of privacy just for people. Like, if they're going to organizations, like, they know who they're hanging out with and what they're doing, and it just feels like an invasion of privacy to me as a citizen. I wouldn't really want someone knowing where I was going of all times. Not that I'm up to anything, but I don't know. It just seems like it leaves room for, like, unjust profiling as well, just to be able to have a license plate and figure out everything about that person, what color they are, how old they are, where they live, what they do. It just really feels like an unjust profiling. It leaves a loophole for that. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Could I have your name one more time?
Kayla LaRocco.
Kayla LaRocco. Thank you, Kayla. Oh, address, Kayla? 1209 York Street. Right? Okay, thanks. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Alyssa Driscoll. Address is 218 Southwood Drive, and it's just a very comparatively small thing. But in his first statement, the police officer referred to the narcotics testing equipment as Narcan, which I think we all know by now what Narcan is, and there are different things. I just want to make sure that it was explicitly stated so that no one else was confused by that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Wes Scully. I live at 508 Pine Tree Drive. Little drive right now. Anyway, I'm definitely opposed the technology that the police department want to use. I have been the president of the NAACP here in Michigan City area for going on 9 years, and the thing that I hear the most out there in my community is the profiling that's going to go on with this piece of equipment. You have no privacy. And it's a lot of money of the taxpayers' money that's going to be spent on something that we don't really want. I think we have a lot of cops in Michigan City. We utilize the state police. We utilize the county police. We got over 80 police officers in Michigan City. And you need to spend more money on tracking license plates. That's just way over the top. We're already in trouble with our privacy as a nation already. And the FBI and anybody else can use this. And like somebody said, a lot of these people that are poor go to jail for missing a ticket or something really simple, and they lose their jobs because they're going to get arrested. They don't have money to bail out, and it's just going to be one repetitional thing, especially for young black Americans, young black African Americans. They're really going to catch it with technology like this. And it scares the hell out of me. I'm just going to tell you like it is. We don't need it.
Thank you, sir.
Evening. My name is Brett Shorts. My address is 362 Franciscan Drive. I mainly want to come up here to address because I'm a former Lake County resident. I've lived there most of my life. I'm from Crown Point, but I've also worked in Gary, Indiana, and I've worked and schooled and lived in Hammond, Indiana. And I have to point out the egregious insinuation of the police chief of the comparing Hammond to Gary, Indiana, and to follow his logic further to say that if they had police scanners, license plate scanners in Gary, Indiana, that would somehow lower the crime rate of this one of the most egregious crime places in the land. And not overlooking, he overlooked the fact that Hammond, Indiana has had very good economic growth for the past 6-7 years, especially compared to Gary, Indiana, that hasn't had economic growth since the 1970s. I find that a very egregious comparison. And also, speaking of arguments, I want to say also he's going by the argument that you'll lower crime rate the more you arrest people, and that's not necessarily true. And that would just make lives harder for the poor and disenfranchised. And if we focus more on economic means, that will help the crime rates go down. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Dennis Matheny, 6757 West 450 North, Michigan City. I own property on 10th Street. I'm a taxpayer in the city. I believe this is an infringement on the Fourth Amendment, illegal search, because if a cop pulls over a car, they either have to have a dog for probable cause or they have to have a search warrant. So why would you want to have to go through that process if you want to do these license plate checks? I don't think that's the proper way to do it. And I don't think that'll be the final cost, because there's a company that has over 2 billion people's names and license plates. And what the city would do is buy into that to get those names from the people. So I don't think that you should go with this. I think it's an infringement, and I think it should have been voted on tonight. I wasn't going to speak on this till public comment since you took it off, but if you're allowing everybody else to talk on it, I guess I'll talk. But I thank you for taking it off your agenda, and I'd like to know what time and date your meeting's going to be. I'll bring some more information. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Jose Segovia, 521 Pearl Street. Just as the gentleman over there, I've lived in Lake County in Gary before, and also have saw these plate monitors used almost 10 years ago in Porter, the town of Porter in Porter County. And I've read extensively on this, as well as spoke to a few police officers in that area. And they essentially, the scenarios he gave, you're shark fishing, but you're going to catch 1,000 smelt and maybe one shark. It's pretty much just going to criminalize, and I do understand driving while suspended is a criminal activity, but you're going to catch a lot of those people, which are already probably just trying to get to work to make the money to get their license back, as well as we have kind of an inferior public transportation system around here. Maybe we should put the money towards that, and then people won't drive with a suspended license. I'm not necessarily against the Narcan thing, but I think the money towards a license plate scanner, that could go towards the police overtime and sick pay, leave, things that they need. Because they are out here trying to help, I think some of them are, but not using a police scanner. That's no good for this community.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
You guys know who I am and where I live, right? Okay, cool.
No, you still have to give us your name and address for the record. Thank
Dang
you.
it, I thought you guys would have known me by now. Sarah Zawacki, 1209 York Street. So my friend Amy just talked about the incident at the bar on Franklin Street, local option. I was there that night, and I just want to tell you guys kind of what happened, how it felt, and why we should not give police officers the technology to further violate our Fourth Amendment rights. So,
Ma'am, if you would, okay, that's not germane to the subject that we're talking about at this time.
oh, it's about the police scanners.
No. Talking about what happened at local options and give the crowd a whole scenario about that. If you want to discuss that under public comment, you can do that. Right now, we're talking about the ordinance that's in front of us.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you.
So, when I was at local option, when our Fourth Amendment rights were violated, it was a really horrible feeling just to see my friends being treated like that. We were just having a good night at the bar. We had just celebrated Park's 2-year anniversary party, which was a great time. Anyway, so they come in with these laptops, and hold on, please don't interrupt me. And
No, ma'am. Excuse me. I'm the president of the city council here, and I just told you that you're talking out of the subject matter. So either you want to abide by the rules of the Michigan City Council, or you'll have to leave the meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, they shouldn't have these police scanners because they've already violated our Fourth Amendment rights, and I don't want that to happen again. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Good evening. Paul Przybolinsky, 1716 Washington Street. Councilman Dabney, I think that's a good idea to get some community involvement. So, Councilwoman Carnes, I think that was a good idea to separate the ordinance. Now, the problem I have with this is people, I don't have a problem checking my record because, I'm not a criminal. At least I don't think I am. Okay. But that's I'm trying to get a little levity going here. But I do believe in a book I read, and it stuck with me. And that was a book by George Orwell, 1984. Now, I'm not saying that the police shouldn't have tools to do their job, but I'm concerned on giving them some direction in the ordinance how it can be used. And the council getting more information on how the security is going to be handled and how they're going to be taught. But in essence, I don't believe that this is Gary or Hammond, Michigan City, Indiana. Okay? But I do believe on what was said earlier about, I was sitting here thinking about this. What are we going to do? Run around town and scan license plates and get people for a suspended license like what was brought up and then wait there for them to come out and nab them? You have to give direction on this. Remember what one of our presidents said, you have to control the military state. So I believe that you, as a city council, need to give the police direction in that ordinance or at some point in time on how these things can be used. Are they going to be, I think I listened to the first part of that presentation that these things can be put on poles and, all kinds of other things for surveillance. I thought that, can't they run your light? I mean, if I'm ignorant to the fact, I need to be told this. Can't they get enough information from you right now, from your plate? And I think that was a good point. If they're running somebody's plate, is it that they can't get federal information? Is that what they're after? I think that the point I'm trying to make, what are we really after here? Are we after criminals? Criminals? Is that what we're going to target? Or are we going to target our own community? That's my point and my concern. And I think that you guys need to gather the information and have a workshop and in the ordinance, direct the the police department. I think that Councilwoman Carnes hit it right on the head about the security, who's going to use it, where's it going to go, and also in the future, how much is it going to cost? I have my own stories about crime in Michigan City. Okay? That is correct. I had a car stolen from me outside of my house. Okay? And I don't want to get into that today, but I think I have my own concerns about car theft in Michigan City. So anyway, think about that, give direction, and I believe that it could be a good tool, but who are you going to go fishing for? That was a very good point. Thank you. And please keep order, no clapping. All right? I don't want you to upset the president. My brother, he's making a good point.
Thank you, sir. Nah.
Hi, I'm Jose Vela from 717 Franklin Street. I live in the Uptown Arts District. I think they have a great point about anyone. I feel like I've been pulled over before, and they've always scanned or like read my license plate and pulled me over, and it's based on that. I really don't feel that these scanners serve the purpose of collecting or scanning license plates. I feel like it's more just a collection, and that this third party is it's for profit. So like obviously it's at the cost of our surveillance and our privacy. So I think it's a very bad idea. This third party doesn't seem very trustworthy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Tony Lee. My address is 5204 Lexita Drive. My concerns would be if your car was stolen, how would that situation be handled? Because that does happen from time to time. Someone's car is stolen, and that could cause problems legally for that owner. The second thing is, will these scanners be turned on and off at random, or will they continuously be on? And then the third concern is I would like to address Councilman Simmons, since he was the former police chief, and I would like to know what your thoughts are.
Well, well, I did co-sponsor this, and I was of the opinion that, well, we want the police to have all the tools they can to fight crimes, but listening to the public, I'll just say I'll hold off on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Allison Workington, 2510 Elston Street. And I'm opposed to the scanners as well, and that's because I oppose any continued militarization of the police, not just locally, but obviously nationally as well. And I think it's important that no one has mentioned that even though they are claiming they're licensed scanners, they do have facial recognition capabilities. And it was in the newspaper, I'm not just making this up. SwissTech said that they will have that capability, they will just choose not to use that. So my question is when are they going to choose to use that? Because that will happen. And this is an invasion of privacy. And I think that people need to remember that this is stepping closer to a military police than just a local police. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Matt Waters, 108 Trunk Court. And I know this is new hot tech, but we've historically in the United States had problems with DNA testing, with other police tools, and we could possibly be, doing the wrong thing. And I would rather live in a community where we have, few criminals on the streets versus one innocent person in jail.
This is John Avila again, 2344 Cynthia Drive. I want to expand just a little bit on what this Mr. Presbolinski said. Chief Williams was talking about that there are rules about, or no rules about purging, and they had some policies about retention. A big concern with this is, and then this is happening in the courts, is that the problems that the courts are finding are with the retention and not purging of this information. And it's considered private information like your cell phone, and you can look at the Carpenter case. I think that was in California about that. And there's a recent case in Virginia that had to do with this, and the state Supreme Court upheld the complaints against the use of these machines. But Mr. Presbolinski said that there should be more discussion about how the police would be regulated in this use and the application of this technology. And that's the point I wanted to make, that's very important, that if you're going to do this, you really have to have limits on it that are open to the public so you can regain some of the trust that just having something like this is going to lose. And thank you again, Ms. Carnes. That was a good move. What's going to happen to the part of the ordinance that was like lopped off by the amendment?
It'll die. It'll die if no other. I mean, it's been split out. It's not part of the ordinance anymore. It's dead. It's dead. It dropped off. It's dead. It won't come up again. Okay. All right. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this subject?
My name is Vince Emanuele, 1713 Franklin Street. First and foremost, the ACLU is opposed to this, regardless of whether repo organizations use it or not. To Brett's point and to the Chief's point, it is egregious to suggest that the reason there are murders taking place in Gary is because they don't have license plate technology, not because an entire steel mill and manufacturing sector collapsed 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And then for the last 40 years, we've been told more drug laws, more crimes. The police need more equipment. We need more people in jail. But for 40 years, we've been doing the same thing. More police, police having more weapons, more militarized weapons, more surveillance technology, and yet no one in this room who wants this technology feels any safer. So why in the world would we continue to do the same things we've done for 40 years and expect a different result? It is totally ridiculous. I totally agree with Brett and with our friend Jose. The chief and police officers have a tough job. My brother is a police officer, so he's probably not happy that I would make these statements, but that's okay. We have interesting Thanksgiving dinners. The problem is further militarization, and until we understand in this city, as the gentleman here just mentioned, we are already over-policed, and I would like to see the numbers of what percentage of people in this city who are low income and black are being arrested and at what rates. For drug crimes, for crimes connected to poverty, and for other nonviolent crimes, because more than 55% of the people who are in prisons today in the United States are there for nonviolent drug crimes. For nonviolent drug crimes. Those are the people that make up the 2.5 million prisoners we have in this wonderful free United States where we have the largest prison population in the world. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this ordinance?
Hello, Sarah Johnson, 106 Garden Trail. I was going to touch on the fact that the ACLU has been researching, writing, and talking about this and warning communities and residents about these license plate scanners now for several years. They've been doing research all over the country in cities where this has been implemented. And I think that, I know this is tabled, but tabled stuff often comes back on the table. And I think it would be good to review some of these, some of the research that the ACLU did, because I personally have no interest in the police having the additional ability to track when and where I am at a church or a mosque or a synagogue, where I grocery shop, who I'm spending my time with, if I'm at a protest, if I'm at a gun show, and tracking where tracking all of that. They have the ability to do it by driving around. So I'm glad that it's tabled, and I hope that it doesn't ever come back on the table, but if it does, we will have more to talk about.
Sir Jericho Chergan, 1713 Franklin Street. I'll back up with that story that you told in the beginning, Chief, about the kid and the crime and the family. Well, let me follow that up with 2003 invasion of Iraq. And in 2003 and 2004, my units were actually using facial recognition and plate recognition through using DSLRs, and then the companies will come in and they were trying to figure things out. What that led to is raiding people's houses in the middle of the night, taking people, sending them to other countries like freaking Guantanamo Bay. I'm not sure what's going on. What we need in this city, after illegal raids, after dogs at the polling stations like in the 50s, we need an oversight board, civilian oversight board. This is the type of ordinance you need to bring up and all of you need to bring to the table. So we have some civil oversight of this police station and this police department. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this ordinance?
Damon Carnes, 1231 East 8th Street. Good evening, Council, President Preslinski. I want to thank the Council for tabling this. I'm sure you have felt the energy in this room, the passion of the people in this city. It is to serve notice that we, the people of Michigan City, are fed up. We're fed up with a police department that has a strained relationship between this community. And we need to make it right. There are black people in this audience. There are white people in this audience. There are Hispanics in this audience. There are people that have just recently moved here, that have been here for a few years, and they see the neglect in the city. We've got to do something. We really got to do something. And it's high time. And tonight is serving notice to the chief, the assistant chief, the Michigan City Police Department, that we, the people of Michigan City, are not going to stand for nonsense. It is time to make things right. You all know I've been saying this for years. I've been coming before this council and talking about this for years. The relationship between the Michigan City Police Department and this community is strained. It is strained. And there needs to be something to happen. I look forward to talking to Councilman Dabney. I want to help. I want to be available to talk to the police department. It would have been nice had the police department talked to the community before they came out with this. That would have been the proper thing. To talk to the community first to see what we feel. Because I am concerned also, is this another tool that's going to be used to racial profile African Americans, Hispanics, people of color? It's a deep concern. And we've got to do something. And I think all of these people have spoken well on this subject. And I am in total agreement. And that this city, it is time for change. It is time for real change. It is time for real leadership. It is time for people to stand up. And you as a council, you did that tonight. You represent that change and you represent that leadership because you feel and you recognize in this ordinance something is not right. And I want to thank each and every one of you for that. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? I don't know if that lady's coming to speak. No. Anyone else wish to speak on this ordinance? Does that lady want to speak? No? Okay. All right. Public comment is now closed. And the only part of that ordinance that'll come up for third reading at our next council meeting, because we've split it. We actually did away with the police scanners. Is the thermoscientific handheld narcotics analyzer will come up for the third reading. Let's see. We're moving on to our
Quick comment on that.
Pardon?
Quick comment.
Yeah. Council comments? Councilman Dabney?
Quick comment. Even though the scanner was taken out of the ordinance, in my mind, still from what I hear, I still would like to get a group of people together here so we can sit down and still start to bridge these divides. So I'm happy with the motion that Councilwoman Carnes made. And I still feel like I need people that will be productive with me and come in with me to be able to sit down and talk to the police. So after the meeting, if you want to come up, leave me your name, contact information. I still think that is a necessity for us to have, like I said, based on what's happening and what I see in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman. Any other council comment?
Mr.
Councilman
President,
Beatry?
I just want to clarify for the young lady in the back. The license plate reader is not tabled. The license plate reader is dead. It has no sponsor. It's not coming off at the table because it's not on the table. It's a non-entity right now.
Okay, moving on to our next ordinance here on third reading. Ms. Schleba, by title only, without objection.
An ordinance on third reading by title only, approving additional appropriation in the budget of the Riverboat Fund for costs incurred by the Fire Merit Commission for advertising costs for new hires and academy training for new hires. And this is introduced by Councilman Hamilton.
Thank you, Ms. Schleva. And there was a formal public hearing held on July 2nd on this. Does the author wish to add anything at this time? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Public comment is now closed. Any council comment?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion to approve by Councilman Hamilton and seconded by Councilwoman Carnes. Ms. Schleva on the vote.
Mr. Stimley? Aye. Mr. Beatry? Aye. Mr. Dabney?
Aye.
Ms. Carnes?
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Prespolinski?
Aye.
And Mr. Simmons? There are 8 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Schleva. Under unfinished business, tonight the council has to approve the Energy Systems Group final acceptance certificates for the Energy Savings Project, which includes the airport lighting project, the golf course lighting project, the central maintenance roofing and lighting project, the Patriot Park ball field lighting project, Pullman Park basketball court lighting project, Pullman Park skate park lighting project, and the Central Services lighting project. So we'll take a vote. First of all, is there a motion to approve all these? If I can get a motion? Yeah. Okay, well, let's do it that way then. Everyone,
Move to approve.
yeah,
Support.
yeah. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Under new business, an FYI, the Common Council has one appointment to the Youth Leadership Commission due to the resignation of Mr. Andre Dockery. This appointment is to be nominated by a Michigan City community organization, and the term is for 1 year. And Councilman Fitzpatrick, contact the organizations to see who wants to be nominated, I guess.
Yeah, and I had also been working with the clerk to get the date scheduled for the first meeting since we will have our 8.
All right. Okay, comments from the public. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of information about the plaza this evening. Pardon? But no, but what I'd like to do, I know everybody, a lot of people want to speak on it, and for the sake of, time, if you could limit your comments to 3 to 4 minutes, that would be great.
All right.
So everybody, please name and address for the clerk.
David Metcalf, 228 East 10th Street. I'm talking about the plaza, of course. So I'm the kind of young professional transplant that the RDC and Main Street Association, they seem to want to cater this town for everything they're doing uptown. But what's kept me around here hasn't been any of those efforts, but instead people from the rest of the city, people meet at poetry slams and punk shows, and people who are not going to be served by this plaza. A plaza that's going to cut parking and block major streets uptown. A plaza whose $11 million price point will have to be repaid by new taxes if the TIF underperforms. Will it pull in that many new wealthy property owners? Will it be that profitable? The average people from the rest of the street should be the priority instead. There's plenty of other things you could do with the TIF. That would serve them uptown childcare centers, athletic centers, affordable housing. Those are just some ideas. Or possibly get rid of the TIF or expand to the entire city. Let that North End property tax money go to everyone, go to the rest of the city, and revamp our public transportation, make it actually usable. Work on our infrastructure on the east side. Aid in lead abatement, help out that grant. Possibly, hire more code inspectors, being that for the upcoming landlord ordinance, because that was a stated concern last Tuesday. I know this plaza has been stalled. I know that it's tabled for now, but its existence, I know that it's been stalled to address concerns. I think its entire existence is a concern, and it should not exist. Thank you.
Dwayne Perry, 2206 Maple Street. I have a comment regarding the landlord ordinance tonight. It took me only one reading of this ordinance to recognize that it shouldn't be passed in its current form. The party that's going to be most and negatively affected by enacting this ordinance will be the renters in Michigan City. The extensive safety inspections by the city will force landlords to incur unplanned expenses, which will be inconvenient because they'll have to be resolved quickly. But the renter will be the final recipient of the impact of the inspection when the rent goes up. All costs of compliance with the International Property Maintenance Code will be passed on by the owners to their tenants, guaranteed. 7 to 10 Michigan Cityans are low income, 1 in 4 live in poverty, and as per Internal Revenue information. Renters rent because they can't afford to own. If landlords are forced to spend significant money on their properties, renters who are already financially strapped will move out. They have no choice. If they can't find less expensive housing, they'll go to shelters. Is that progress? Enforcing this ordinance will improve property appearance and value throughout the city, but it'll also raise rents $200 to $300 a month, which most residents won't be able to afford. Also, the pool of Michigan Cityans who can afford this now higher priced housing isn't big enough to fill all of the homes. The bottom line, the population of the struggling homeless and the number of vacant houses and apartments in Michigan City will both increase. This ordinance can, and I believe will, be used for the gentrification of Michigan City. Making established neighborhoods exclusive by mandating property improvements, which raises a rent, which forces the current residents out, then marketing the properties to new wealthier renters. That's gentrification. Michigan City is a diverse community of many incomes, nationalities, races, and religions. This ordinance will disrupt that diversity. Landlords, don't allow yourself to be used by the city as its tool for gentrification. You shouldn't have to fix the housing issues this administration has failed for 7 years to address. The number of Michigan cities that rent their homes today is the same as it was in 2012 when this administration took office. Mr. Phillips, if you want to fix a housing issue that we have, get with the mayor and bring jobs to Michigan City, living wage jobs. That'll fix a lot of our ills. I fully support forcing unethical, unresponsive landlords to go by the rules, but not at the expense of the citizens of Michigan City. Thank you.
Patrick Boyer, resident of 218 Southwood Drive. Good evening. I come before the council to address 2 issues that concern me. One of them has already been addressed tonight, but please hear me out. The first issue is that of the proposed new plaza. Before I begin, I want to thank Michigan City's leadership for halting that process for now. I just hope we don't stop there. While I admit that my understanding of the specifics is limited, it has been made reasonably clear to me that due to the nature of a TIF district, the money changing hands is not eligible to be used to improve other aspects of the city that need real help, such as infrastructure, housing, or youth programs, to name a few. In this light, I would question the appropriateness of continuing to use TIFs, as it would seem to foster an insider-outsider mentality among the city's own populace as to which areas could benefit from incoming funds. I believe that sharing the wealth ethically, based on need, would go a long way to restoring the good faith of our citizens, over half of whom struggle with living paycheck to paycheck. My second point of concern, which I'm thankful you killed tonight, is that of the proposition of our police force to be given license plate scanners with facial recognition capabilities. While I know that our officers do a very hard job, In this modern climate of widespread law enforcement overreach, I believe that such technology is a step too far for this community. When a number of officers can detain an entire drinking establishment to check for active warrants, it is not the time to enhance indiscriminate potential. While I hope that such a capability would never be abused here, the chance of tracking the average citizen at a health clinic, a place of worship, an immigration center, a union building, or another potentially contentious facility is a chance that I cannot, in good conscience, take in my community. In closing, I wish to paint a picture of how these issues work together to send the wrong message. By potentially following through with a plaza that not everyone wants and for which your efforts will not even benefit a struggling community, and then almost being allowed to give a level of power to law enforcement that no one should be allowed to have in these times, it would have looked as though you would sooner police our citizens than help them. I hope we can change that together with tonight as a starting point. Thank you again for hearing us and for serving us. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Go
Jackie
ahead.
Allison.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
Jackie Allison, 4424 Ohio Street. And I would just like to say that education is the most powerful tool that we can use. And if we invest in early childhood education in Michigan City, that would alleviate a lot of the things that are going on in this city. Thank you.
Well, yes, sir.
My name is Bob Bailey, and I've lived in Michigan City since 1960 after being hired as the initial executive director of the Department of Redevelopment. I resigned from that position in 1974. What I would like to comment on tonight is the plaza. The address is 311 Kenwood Place. I'd like to comment on the plaza. What is being planned here is a miniature of Millennium Park in the Loop of Chicago. I'm aware that Michigan City is not Chicago, but nevertheless, I wish to read a timely headline from the Chicago Tribune about Millennium Park. Rebounding from decades of decline, the Loop has dusted itself off and is undergoing a renaissance as a magnet for tourists, shoppers, other spenders, and taxpayers drawn to stores, theaters, restaurants, and Millennium Park. Not long ago, the Loop was a ghost town after 6 p.m. Retailers had avoided the Loop for decades. Much of the rebirth can be traced to Millennium Park's opening. Held up as a model use of urban public space, the concerts, architecture, and gardens attract millions of visitors. The transformation is phenomenal. There's just so much to see, and I feel safe. It's cheap entertainment. It encourages more people to come around. Rents in some spots have doubled since Millennium Park opened. There's been such tremendous growth here. Residential population soared 50% from 2000 to 2006, and residents have plenty of money to spend. What is happening in Michigan City, what's happening in Chicago, can happen in Michigan City on a lesser scale, I admit that. The article is a litany of reasons that the plaza should be wholeheartedly supported by city officials and the general population of Michigan City. I understand that those opposed to the plaza have the city's best interests at heart, but please don't oppose a well-thought-out plan by trained, experienced officials who are attempting to move the entire city forward to become the city it should and can be. No one has asked me to speak on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Larry Silvestri. I live at 314 Kenwood Place. I was on the Redevelopment Commission for 7 years. We just refinanced the bond for the Lafayette Barker Sewer Project, but we've never used it. That was financed by the Redevelopment Commission, and we're still paying for it. But there was a proposal by the sanitary district to connect to the outfall to Trail Creek and also connect to the areas that are needed. And I think that should be a high priority for the Redevelopment Commission. That expense would be a big one, and otherwise it would be placed on the ratepayers of the water and sewer service. So I think that would be an ideal use of TIF money. An unglamorous one, but it would benefit a lot of people who might be having flooded basements. But In addition to that expense to the redevelopment commission, there's also the double track project. We want a deluxe roundabouts or cul-de-sacs. We want a good station block. That's going to be expensive. The Pine Apartments, looking for new developers. That's an unknown. We don't know if we're going to have to put money, to help the developers, which often is the case. There's Washington Park upgrade, which is planned. There's quite a few projected expenses of TIF money, and I think the reason the outpouring of objection to the plaza is the sticker shock. It has increased from a few million to 5 million. Now it's over 8 million. But I think there's a lot of things that can be done with the TIF money, and there's a lot of benefits that we see, and it's spectacular, the improvements that we've seen in Michigan City from the TIF money. There's a lot of benefits from it, and it's not a negative in entirety. But I would hold off on the plaza and move ahead with the Lafayette Barker sewer project. That would benefit a wide group of citizens. And there's a lot of misconceptions about it. The TIF money or tax money cannot be used for daycare centers or, there's quite a few misconceptions. Thank you.
Sir.
Wow, what a meeting. I'm glad you're the president and I'm not. Joe Core, LaPorte County citizen, been here all my life, 3768 North, 525 West. I'm here to talk personally on certainly the plaza. I have been probably in almost every meeting that the city held on this plaza. You folks have a tough decision. When I attended the redevelopment commission meeting 2 weeks ago, I did not have a clue that we're going to get all this negativity. I really did not, because in every meeting that I've attended, Blue Chip Casino, City Hall, the Senior Center, everybody was extremely focused and positive. Nobody was against it whatsoever. Okay? All of a sudden, tides have changed. And what I don't like is when I sit in a meeting and folks like you who are running for office get threatened. Well, you can be threatened by the positive people also, not just the negative ones, the positive ones. So keep that in the back of your mind. I'm not here to intimidate you whatsoever. But this plaza is one of the best things that could ever happen to Michigan City. If we want to see the north end of town and things progress with what we've already done with Art Space, what you've done with the lighting downtown, changing the streets to 2 ways instead of 1 way. Not much we can do with Franklin Street. That was done in my time many, many years ago. I didn't like it when they done it. I didn't like where they put the library. If it was me, I'd take the library and move it out in the lake somewhere. Okay? So, now that I've said all that, there is no doubt in my mind that this plaza could be one of the best things that could ever happen to Michigan City. I'm not sure how many people in this audience, or the one prior, has been to any of these sessions that Don Babcock, Craig Phillips, the mayor, how many other people, all these experts that we hired to put this project together, they told the story so well. They're not BSing people. This is reality. You just heard a gentleman talk about Millennium Park in Chicago. Well, I know we're not Chicago. We're not trying to be Chicago, but what we are trying to do is create enough development that Michigan City can prosper. If we turn this down, I think you can take development in Michigan City and push it to the side. This is a big key to it, and that's not what you want to do. Yeah.
Hello, my
Yes,
name
sir.
is Logan Patz. I live on 213 Walnut Street, and I do not think this plaza is a really good idea. I think with $11 million, you could do a lot more different things and better things instead of just building a plaza in the middle of our city. I feel that would be a waste of $11 million, And the thing I'm questioning about is who would run these little mini stores in the plaza. And I know that would bring a lot of people in, but I feel like he could like upgrade things that are more important than a plaza in the middle of our city. That's all.
Yes, sir.
Jason Frazier, 119 Dale Road. I do agree with this little gentleman down here. He's got a lot of common sense for his age. I don't think that it's a price, the sticker price people are concerned about. They're concerned about money being put in different places of the areas, such as improving streets or sidewalks or more recreation in our parks. Because right now, I don't want to down tourism, but this is all that the city focuses on is tourism. We need more money towards our community instead of tourism. That's just common sense right there. $11 million, even if it's $2 million, it's not the sticker price. We're always catering to the north end, this end, that end, whatever, the beach. It's just ridiculous. But I have another concern. My friend Rodney McCormick has sent me out here to speak on his behalf. And he'd like to know when you guys are going to implement cameras and microphones in the city hall, if any.
Okay. Thank you.
Any answer to that?
No.
Not at all.
We can talk to you after the meeting, but we don't get into
right. But I'm going to miss it because
discussions
it's public
during
open
the public
right now.
comment.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sharon Goodman, 2023 Lakeshore. I am from LaPorte. I lived there all my life. And I've seen LaPorte go through its whole thing. 10 years ago, LaPorte was horrible. There was nothing going on there. They put in their plaza, and when they put it in, it was very simple. Now, if you go there, they've got about 8 buildings being rehabbed. They've got tenants coming in. The plaza has expanded because they've done it gradually. It doesn't all have to be done at once. And people, I've heard the talking about gentrification and where the money should be spent for the streets and all these other things. Well, that's where the money comes from, is when people come into the town and they spend money. When there is a plaza there, families come in. In other cities, crime has gone down because there's a lot of families there enjoying themselves. There just isn't going to be the crime that there is now. Gentrification is not a bad thing. No. Wait a minute. No. It isn't a bad thing when it brings people into the town, and when they're there, they're going to go eat in a restaurant. They might go look in the shops, buy some stuff. They give money to the merchants. And those people, those merchants pay taxes. The taxes go to the streets and the lights and all the things that we like and that we need in our city. That's not going to happen when people just stay in their houses and complain. Well, we are here, yes, but people are saying, don't do it. We don't want city people, or we don't want different people than we want in the town. Well, that's what brings the money in that makes things better for everybody. Well, I know I hear no, but it does, when you have a plaza, it creates cohesiveness in the community. People socialize, they go there. If you look at the one in LaPorte now, it's full of people. Kids are playing in the splash pad, and it's not a fancy place with booths and little shops or whatever you were talking about. It doesn't have to be that. I think that was a suggestion, and that wasn't what they need to start out with. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hate me, but that's all I have to say.
The lady
Hi.
in the middle.
Hello. Anya Gums, 222 Springland. I care about libraries
Address,
personally.
ma'am?
Oh, 222 Springland?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I care about libraries and places to bring our kids. Currently, there's not a lot of them. And a bougie plaza for out-of-towners seems inappropriate. It's not going to lower crime to have a place for people out of town to hang out. I think we should invest in our city. If we want to grow our city, we need to have people there, people who care, places for people to go to engage with each other. Having something to point off another cute little sign, breweries and a plaza this way, what's the point? Genuinely, that's a lot of money. I can do a lot of concrete. My particular neighborhood, when he moved in, they were redoing some of the sidewalks. It hasn't been touched again since then. I've been there for 8 years. I mow my lawn and my sidewalk. It's embarrassing.
Hi, Caitlin Farrell, 417 Gardena Street. I wrote out some things to say, but first I want to address this gentleman in the library. I worked at the library for 6 years. I recognize a lot of faces from the community here tonight, and I do not recognize you, sir. And you can devalue anything you want if you don't actually use the service. And I will say that libraries are very valuable to our community. They are one of the only public spaces that you can attend with your family anymore without the expectation of spending money. So if you ask me what I would do with the $11 million that is proposed for this plaza, I certainly wouldn't suggest a new park. When I'm looking around the city, one of the things that I am not struggling to find to do with my child is go to a park or find a public meeting space. We've attended several events already this summer. We've been to Pride Fest, we've been to the Food Trucks Festival, we've gone to the splash pad that already exists. We have these things here already without spending the additional money. What I did struggle with finding for my family was childcare. It is difficult in this town to find a daycare center, not an in-home daycare, a daycare center that is non-religious to take your kid to. And also, I mean, with how difficult it is for many families to afford the cost of childcare, I spend, just my family, 50 to 75% more on childcare per month for one kid than I do on my mortgage. And that sounds ambiguous, but that's $10,000 a year that I spend on childcare for one child, for a 2-year-old, not an infant, one child. Mr. Prespolinski, you and I live on the same street. You might have noticed, 2 blocks away. When you look down our street, you notice we have a lot of children in the neighborhood. And when you also look down our street between your house and my house, there is a gap in the sidewalk. There's no sidewalk that exists. If you look at the streets that border our street, there are gaps in the sidewalks. No sidewalks exist. The streets that connect our streets, no sidewalks. At the end of our street, there is a very well utilized park, Gardena Park, that was just redone a couple of years ago. If I was going to spend $11 million on the city, I would spend it on making sidewalks to get to the parks that already exist, to make sure that our children can get there safely, so that they can walk to their bus stops safely. And my last point is that I understand that the money you're talking about for this plaza cannot be used for sidewalks in our neighborhood. We're not in the TIF district. We're not in either of them. And I understand that you can't use the money on daycares. But what I don't understand is why the city has designated zones where tax money is being clustered and it is being allocated by people who are not elected officials. That's all I have to say.
Allison Workentine, 2510 Elston Street. I am opposed to the plaza, and unlike some people here, I think gentrification is horrific, and it is happening right now. And the reason I don't support the plaza is because I don't support gentrification. I don't support moving people out of the city to bring in tourists from Chicago. I don't support just doing things that only promote are only going to benefit the investors and small business owners. I want to see projects that benefit the 44% of children living in poverty here in Michigan City, and I want to see something to address the 53% of people in the city that cannot make ends meet and make bills every single week.
Go ahead.
Lorelei Brown, 2510 Elston Street. I don't think that they should have the plaza because I think the city should be focusing on making sidewalks for people who need to walk places and they should be allowed to get places safely.
Hi, my name is Valerie Pendergast, 305 Decatur Street. I am a member of Organized and United Residents of Michigan City. We were recently accused of being radicals. But when it's been proven time and time again that strategies like TIF districts do not work, except in cases of gentrification, which we absolutely oppose because every single person in this room would most likely be displaced in that event, why don't we try something radical, like lifting our city up from the bottom, helping our struggling neighbors and our struggling community instead of pushing them out someplace else? This plaza needs to die. Thank you.
Rob Johnson, 106 Garden Trail. I want to correct a couple things right away. So yeah, the meetings, I'm sure they were mostly positive, but having been offered one of those meetings, it was basically, what do you want out of a plaza? At no point did the RDC go around and go, what does the city want? It was, what do you want out of this plaza we're definitely building? So yeah, you'll get like a list of cool things, and it's not like plazas are bad. Like people go, oh, gross, plaza. But you know, I heard somebody say, a budget is the moral priorities of a city. There. I mean, where would a plaza even come? Like, it's not top 10 or 15 or 25. It's good for a certain segment of investors, and I'm glad the gentleman here mentioned Chicago. Because there's a lot of cities around the region, around the Rust Belt, that are claiming these gentrification, like, oh, so great, revitalization of Detroit, revitalization of Chicago. I've lived in some of them. I haven't been here the whole time. I lived in Indianapolis in a neighborhood called Fountain Square. It's one of the cover of the book stories of isn't it cool to have these reinvestments in old working class neighborhoods. So when I moved there, it was a mostly white, working class, poor. Houses were between like $60,000 and $100,000. This is a mile from downtown Indianapolis. I got rent cheap. Now it was in a slumlord house. My house would not maintain more than 53 degrees for $500 a month. So, you know, I feel really bad for these slumlords that are going to get driven out of business, but we'll get to that in a different day. Anyway, so I moved there, and it was going through this revitalization. Well, I'm a young, hip kid. I got my new job with the city. I'm excited to see all this cool stuff going in, cool restaurants, cool bars, cool stuff. Well, quite quickly I realized that even though the values were going up everywhere, my wages as a city worker stayed right where they were. So the rent in my apartment that had gone from, I'd moved out of that house into an apartment that was $800 or $600 a month. He wanted to raise it to $800, then he wanted to raise it to $1,200. By the time I left, I think I've come back, it's like $1,200 a month for a 500 square foot apartment. So my wages didn't go anywhere. They didn't suddenly start paying restaurant workers more just because the value of the building went up. It's just everyone had to leave. Now houses in that neighborhood are $300,000, $400,000. If you own a home and you flip it, good for you. If you're one of the 50% of people in the city who rent, you're screwed. This is a redistribution of wealth to people who own property in the area being developed, period. Unless you can tell me how this is going to increase wages or provide some mass base of hiring for the thousands of people in the city who need it, that's all you're doing is bidding up the cost of property. If you own property, good for you. That's it. But Chicago is another interesting thing. So yeah, Chicago, look at it. Look at it from the 70s. Look at the downtown that was full of crime. Look at the size of Skyline. Compare it to today. Stacked up, it's huge. Look at all the fancy amenities downtown. Chicago shrunk by 1/3 in that time. Weird. Somehow all the poor people had to leave. This isn't like mystical history. Go. The entire south side of Chicago is depopulated. They have shuttered the schools, they have shuttered the industry, and the people are gone. So who benefited? What's so good about Millennium Plaza? If you're a tourist, it might be nice. If you live there, shove off. I work in Chicago. I can't live there. It's ridiculous. And this is what this is. You're just the latest people to hear about it. This is your turn to be pitched it's going to be really good. Yeah, for a certain segment of people. They're going to make a lot of money. And this goes to what a TIF and an RDC is. I'm glad people are bringing it up. The job of an RDC is to raise the property values. It's in the code. Check it out. That's their job. They take tax money and they give it away to people
on amenities to raise property values. As Mr. Babcock said, they gave money back to Blue Chip. Where's our Blue Chip money? We gave it back. We gave it back to a casino, which is a money factory. I mean, are you kidding me? It's just a rigged game, and they take 9 of the $10 you put in, and you paid them back. Your RDC that's supposed to be serving the people gave them their money back for an extension on a profit factory. So this isn't the way to run a town. And I mean, Chicago is going through its own crisis with its TIF districts right now, as necessary services starve because all the money's in TIF accounts. California is unwinding and getting rid of its entire TIF system, which is where it came from. This is not the way to do things. It's deliberate segregation, and it's designed around speculating and bidding up the cost of property to the benefit of those who own it. So, now, you can't spend $11 million of TIF funds on childcare, but the TIF doesn't have $11 million. That's why they have to bond it. They get $4.3 million a year, whatever the gentleman in the very nice suit said. That money, until we can unwind that TIF, yeah, it's stuck. But could they build public housing instead of luxury housing? Bet they could. Could you open a grocery store in the North End instead of building a plaza? Bet you could. I bet it'd be creative. I bet you'd have to think about it. It's not going to get handed to you by consultants. But there are needs this city has. And until we can get rid of this system, you need to actually start evaluating the priorities. Our expenditures are a moral statement of our priorities. And thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Merry Christmas. My name is LaTanya Troutman from 201 Holiday Street. And I want a job, not a civic plaza. And I want to be able to hang out in front of my house where there is lights there, because right now, as I told you before, there is no lights. And I want to be there in front of my house and hang out and not have to go to a civic plaza. And I want to not be over-policed in front of my home. That's it. That's all.
Hi, I'm Marisa Chapels, 229 Southwood Drive. I have 2 young kids. I'm not anti-plaza in general. My family and I spend a lot of time around Michigan City in our parks and playgrounds. I am anti this plaza. We are not Valpo. We are definitely not Chicago. We need the basics before we can get an outdoor living room that we can only use half the year. We don't need to borrow $11 million for a plaza that wouldn't even be under the Parks Department control when we barely have sidewalks, we have little to no youth programming provided by the city, and 53% of families are struggling to make ends meet. It's clear to me that this plaza is not for us. You might be thinking, well, we wouldn't be able to use that money for those ideas if we wanted to. And why is that? Why do the TIF districts exist in the first place? They're inherently undemocratic, and so is the existence of the RDC. I understand this plaza is not on the agenda tonight, but it might be in the future. The plans could change completely, and they could ask you for a lot less money. What I want you all to think about is how much of our tax money you've put in the hands of developers under the guise of economic development versus the services provided by the city for those who are struggling the most. Something like the landlord registration ordinance could actually do some good for poor and working class people. I'd like to see more support on initiatives like that. And to one gentleman's comments about how it would raise rent. The registration is free. The inspections are free. So scaring people with saying that the rents are going to raise is what landlords are going to be saying, so they don't have to get their housing inspected for safety. If they're scared to prove that their housing is not safe, it's probably not safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Dennis Matheny, 6757 West 450 North, Michigan City. I'd like to talk just a short bit on bonds and on TIF districts. I've been against TIF districts for 30 years. TIF districts take money away from homeowners and they take money away from the schools. That's why your taxes have to go up to pay for more city services. Because the money a TIF district funds up goes to a specific area, and it doesn't benefit the whole. Now, when it comes to bonds, Michigan City gets approximately $10 or $12 million a year from the riverboat. Now, that's cash money. Now, why do we have to go out and bond this and bond that and bond this? Because the taxpayer has to pay for the interest on that bond. See, we hear $11 million bond, but if it's 20 years at 5%, it's now $22 million. It's not $11 million. It's double. So you have to understand, you don't want to keep doing this bonding when you have the cash money. And then the city turns around and bonds out to the max and you can't bond anymore. So the taxpayer gets it in both ends. So I really would appreciate you not continue to bond, stop the bonding, take the cash money, and pay this stuff as you go. It's not what you got, it's what you do with what you got. I was the elected trustee in Cool Spring Township, which was half of Michigan City. And I saw what went on. And the TIF districts hurt the schools. It hurts the property owners. It hurts the renters. Please stop the bonding. I'm against this $11 million that goes into this plaza. If you want to get something improved, because I grew up in this town in 1948. I'm an old man. I'm not no young millennial. So I've seen this town grow, I've seen it stagnate, and I've seen it go under. And it's going down. And you're putting all your eggs in one basket from 11th Street North. I think it's time you start putting your money from 11th Street South. I don't really want applause. What I want them, these guys and women that are elected up here, I want them to do their job. They work for us. We don't work for them. So please do what we need. I've stood here in this council many a times, and I've seen study after study after study after tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in studies, and nothing be done. If you people want some information, quit paying these contractors, quit paying these companies to do these studies. Here's where we have a problem. We have a city that turns around and takes that money and pays these contractors. Now, the reason why Millennial Plaza, or whatever you want to call it, is going up in price, because I worked at NIPSCO as an engineer for 6 years. The more money that's put into the project, the more money the architect makes. Would you rather have 5% of $1 million or 5% of 11 million? That's where the money's at. This needs to stop. Stop spending the money and pay as you go, and this city will increase. I'm not trying to chastise you. I'm just asking you to please do. Ask the public what they want. Hold a meeting and ask them what we need. They'll tell you and it won't cost you nothing. Thank you.
Dwayne Perry, 2206 Maple Street. For the last 2 years, I've been trying to inform the people of Michigan City about the bonding situation on a show that I do called Point Counterpoint. Several months ago, Michigan City was $69 million in debt, principal and interest. That was before the Ohio Street widening project. And I've said many times that the reason all these projects are bonded, which is absurd, something as inexpensive on a grand scale as the Wabash streetscape, is because these TIF districts cannot be closed out until all debts are paid. So these bonds, the city keeps selling bonds and refinancing bonds to keep these TIF districts alive. California, who started the TIF program, canceled it. It didn't work. Indianapolis is not happy with it. They're phasing it out because of towns like Fort Wayne, Carmel, and Michigan City, who have generated all this money and are sitting on it not using it as originally intended. Had the mayor gotten his stormwater fee in 2017, the sanitary district was going to sell $24 million more worth of bonds, which would have put us up around 100. I'm glad everybody feels the way they do and they're here tonight, because this has got to stop. We need to invest in material infrastructure and human infrastructure, the people of Michigan City. We need to get rid of these bonds, close these TIF districts, put the money back in the general fund, and start bringing the services and amenities and the jobs that we so dearly have needed for too long. Thank you.
Ellie Hartman, 230 Fogarty Street. I'm not here to speak about TIFs or bonds or the living room downtown. I just want to speak briefly about ordinance 4509 that we've discussed before. We were very disappointed when it was passed, and we were surprised that it was passed. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I'm here to speak about ordinance 4509, and I'm here to state that ordinance 4509 is invalid. It's invalid because when the initial paperwork was sent out, it did not discuss the actual location of the development. It was listed as Blaine Street, and the development is not on Blaine Street. It's on Lake and Felton Streets. So I'm respectfully submitting this to you, and I'm going to pass the microphone on to Jim Morse, who will elaborate on the law that this is based on.
Hi, Jim Morse from 114 Krieger Ave. Again, I just found out about this partly because it was mislabeled as a Blaine Street development. They're trying to take one of the last places on the north end that is actually affordable housing for people who want to own a home in the area, and they're trying to put duplexes in. It's part of a development that wants to continue to regentrify and change the whole nature of it, make it another beach development, a beach walk too, if you will. And they played these. These developers have played these kind of games before where they misrepresent where the property is located. I personally suffered from this because we had a property right behind, actually bordering a property, and never got notice that the city granted them a variance, which in fact infringed on our property. And the reason we were never given notice is they put a different street label as where the property was located. So we were never served notice. We never saw it in the newspaper because it didn't indicate that it was there. And until they started construction, I had no knowledge. They're doing the same thing here. This is a Felton and Lake Street development. They put Blaine, which is 3 streets over and is bordered by some empty lots. So no one got notice of this. They also blew under Indiana Code 36-7-4-604 the notice requirements, because this says under the statute that if a subject matter of a proposal references a specific parcel of real estate, and this does, then all owners of real estate to a depth of 2 ownerships are interested parties who must receive notice of this subsection and must accurately describe the property. This did not do either. They did not serve notice to the required people. And this states in section E that a zoning ordinance is not to be held invalid unless it fails the notice and hearing requirements of this section. And this clearly violated the notice requirements. And therefore we ask that this ordinance be revoked as invalid and that the issue be revisited by the council.
I'm sorry, Eleanor Hartman, once again, 230 Fogarty Street. I just wanted to remind you that the minutes from when we spoke at May 8th be reinstituted into the actual records. Also, the reason why none of us in the neighborhood knew about it was because we never had the accurate information. That's why we're having to speak about it now. Thank you.
also have a copy of the statute if you'd like it for the record. And we'd like to have this ordinance declared invalid.
Hi, my name is Kayla Laraco, 1209 York Street. My concern regarding the plaza is for the actual citizens who live here year-round. We pay tax money, and that's what this is going for the people who live here year-round. We have lived here, and we should benefit from something that we are paying for, not tourists or wealthy people who have beach houses. The winter is like a dead wasteland. Why don't we take this money and use it for something for the people who live here year-round so that we have something to do in the winter instead of have our teens just get into trouble because there is nothing to do. It's just boredom. We could benefit from using this money in a greater way. I really want to see this city grow. I really think it can. I just don't think that this is the way to do it. Thank you.
Good evening. Paul Przybylski, 1716 Washington Street. Well, I believe we've had a lot of good input tonight in discussion. Councilman Dabney, I would like you to put my name, first name, on your list, all right? And Mr. Wes Scully is also wanting to be on that. And my brother has my number. I don't have a problem. I'll give it to you. Okay? Some people think they do. 877-5143. So, in thinking about everything that was said tonight, and I'm going to say some things, and I don't want people to take them in a negative way. The interpretation and enforcement of the code. Mr. Beatree, I think that when it comes to trash containers, that if you could so please, because you're privy to that information, find out how many tickets were given for littering in the city of Michigan City. Not to say to go out and go wild and enforce the code. My point is, people, there's a littering problem. Are people enforcing the code and the state law when it comes to littering? Okay? Because I could, granted, there is a problem with litter. And with that being said, I try to recycle as much as I can, and I do not and have not thrown things out on the roadway or anything like that because I believe in the code. I believe in a code of leave no trace. And if anybody, I'm not being comical. There's, some people do take an oath and abide by it. So, and that being said also, is we asked John Pugh many years ago to come up with a code enforcement book and educate all the departments of the city, all the department heads, and that never took place. But I think that that's a direction that we need to go to solve some of these problems. And not one of them, and some people may not like it, that I'm going to say this, is some of these houses need to be divided where they have their own heating and cooling and water meters and gas meters. There's a lot, and that's something to be addressed also. On this young gentleman's remarks about something to do and all these younger people, something to do, I got a good idea what you could do with $11 million is build a sports complex with pools and basketball courts. There's land available in the city of Michigan City. And the reason I say that is because one of your consultants that was here promoting the plaza from Rapid City, I was in Rapid City 17 years ago. That community at that time, I believe, was 28,000 people. They had 2 pools in that community. Very nice, very nice. It's what you do for the community to bring the standard of living up for the whole community. The plaza, a lot of people are saying, they're promoting it. I disagree that it's gonna be the heartfelt engine driving the community because of this. That consultant from Rapid City, that's the gateway. That is the gateway to one of our national parks. The majority of people that go out west go through Rapid City. The amount of people, their population has grown 100% since I was there. They're like 60,000 people now. So it wasn't that they have a different clientele, they have a different population base, they have a different configuration to promote their, or what he's promoting, the plaza. I think that we need to go somewhere to do something for the community with TIF money. You had a north end TIF and a south end TIF. Like Mr. Perry said, yes, these things they just keep feeding on themselves and keep financing them so they keep going. And I don't think that those were some good comments that Dennis made. I don't think a lot of people understand the whole concept of that TIF. I got some information tonight about California. But I will say that we need to do something. We need to do something for the community in general. I'm still waiting for the park department to put the sledding hill up out there at Patriot Park. Some people do like winter activities. And I still go, believe it or not, I still go sledding. I like to be out there in the winter, okay? And that's what we need to do. And we need to bring that effort in with everybody that's here. Because you know what the problem is? I've been waiting, I've been biting my tongue for a long time. This city it has a problem. It's a victim of its own faulty logic on its planning. You look at what they did on Franklin Street and closed it off. Now we reopened it, after it was all dead and gone. But now what do we have out on the south end of town? A wasteland. I don't even know if if that's part of the TIF. I don't know. I have to look at the map. That's what we need to be doing. We need to redevelop that property if we can. I don't know if it's in the TIF district. But with that being said, I do like the library. That's the only thing I'm going to agree with, is that it was placed in the wrong place, and it should have been taken and moved to the Memorial Hospital property where there's a stalled project. All right? I got one more comment about the Lafayette Sewer Project. We spent $8 million on that, but here's what, just like Dennis said, is putting that money on the side to do that project, the Lafayette Sewer Project. Well, I think we need to have a workshop with the sanitary district and find out where we're going. That's what we need to do. Community involvement. Thank you.
Sue Deutscher, 103 Felton Street. I am complaining about the one you had a meeting where you passed 3. We're here on 1, 2, and 3, and you guys somebody passed that Blaine Street property in one reading, and it was very wrong. I'm also an owner on Lake Avenue, and according to the statutes, we were supposed to be notified. We were not notified. I got my mail. I was out of town, but my mail comes. So they did not do proper service. No matter what they told you, they did not do it. I should have been notified. And I'm protesting that you passed it. I think it should be rescinded, and I am here to tell you that the whole community is very upset about this, that you only read it once, that you didn't know anything about, that it was on labeled as Blaine Street, and you went ahead and voted on something you weren't even sure where it was, because if you look at where it is, it's not on Blaine Street. So it's not showing you anybody who voted for that they're really paying attention to what they're voting on. So as a Michigan City resident, almost my whole life, I will say that we're really unhappy with what's happening, and we need to work on how we can get that off. It's invalid. Thank you. And I thought you said 3 or 4 minutes. I'm sorry, but that previous gentleman went on for 6 or 7. So I think you need to stop at 3 or 4. Just saying.
Hello, I'm Vivian Ott. I live at 105 Felton Street. I really want to make sure that the council is aware that the neighborhood is upset. I know that you have seen Ellie Hartman here time and time again advocating on our behalves, but there's several of us in the background who are unhappy with Ordinance 4509 that was passed, and that we do believe that there is evidence that shows that it should be invalidated because it was not, that proper notice was not given to the neighborhood on the reading to be able to have that pass as an ordinance, sorry. So I'm here on behalf of our neighborhood wanting you to relook at that and to come to a different decision on it. Thank you.
Greg Deutscher, 103 Felton Street. You've passed the ordinance to put in 4 to 5 duplexes. We have a problem with the sanitation. They're out there at least twice a month, unclogging the sewer system, blowing up sewer gas into our homes. And you're going to put in 5 duplexes with how many people there? Our parking situation is absolutely terrible. And we're going to put, and when they rent these places, there's 7 or 8 cars. Where are you going to put these people? And you put up a traffic counter, and at this point, it lasted 2 days when the buses were running, and now the buses aren't running. Now we have the counter back in place. It's not going to get a true reading on how many people pass this area when it's not, the school's not in session. We have a terrible problem with Wild McLean already. Their trucks come in 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. They sit there to wait to get loaded. They park at the end of Felton Street. There's 7 or 8 cars at the end of Felton Street because they have 2 duplexes there that the rent's so high they probably have 2 or 3 families living in them. So I'm totally opposed to these duplexes and an out-of-town developer coming in saying it's Blaine Street when it's actually Lake Street. They defined the property improperly, so it should be null and void. Thank you.
Emanuele, 1713 Franklin Street. Tonight, I think we've heard a lot. The first thing that we heard tonight is that we're subsidizing, and it's quite ironic because we had the woman from the Blue Chip Casino here telling us that they are making market record profits of any of the casinos in Indiana, and yet at the same time, this government is going to subsidize a profitable organization. We're subsidizing the Blue Chip Casino, which is already probably one of the worst things that's happened to the city. If you don't know the numbers, the bottom third of income earners in the United States account for 60% of casino revenue. They also account for about 70% of lottery ticket revenue. What a casino is a leech and a vampire in a city that takes money from poor people, turns them into addicts, allows them to drink, puts them in situations that are completely unhealthy, and then tells us, well, here's a couple $100,000 for a park. Aren't we happy? I think that's totally unacceptable. I think it's time that we stop promoting the idea that the blue chip casino is some kind of wonderful thing that's happened to the city. It is indeed not. We're also subsidizing golf courses. I have heard more, and this is many city council meetings and committee meetings I've been to. I have heard more substantive comments, more interesting questions from the public tonight than I have heard from elected officials over the last 2.5 years of coming to these meetings. I have heard more qualified people in this audience speak than most of the people who sit on the city council today. Thankfully, there is going to be a change come January, and if the new council that has a mandate to deal with these issues of inequality, systemic poverty, systemic racism, a lack of affordable housing, climate change, and other issues in the city, then the next city council is going to get booted out as well. The two biggest issues in the city for the mayoral election, if you didn't notice, was policing and development. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who supported Virginia Martin and who supported Ron Muir. All you had to do was drive down some neighborhoods in Michigan City, and it turns out that the people on the north side and the people, the small business owners and the people in the Uptown Arts District, oh, they loved Ron Muir's policies. Guess who didn't love Ron Muir's policies? The people on the west side, portions of the south side, and the east side of the city, which is disproportionately black. This city council meeting tonight was about 85 to 90% white, if not 95%. There's an entire segment of the community that is missing from these conversations, that's missing from civic action, that doesn't show up to these meetings. When these committees hold meetings, it's often at times that people can't access. As Caitlin mentioned earlier, people are lacking childcare services and the like. This city has divisions that run far longer and deeper than since Organized and United Residents of Michigan City has been around, and since way before Sergio and I opened PARC. People in this community have said, we need young people to get involved. And then when young people get involved with the political process, they say, oh, but not like that. You're not like that, right? You want young people involved, except for when young people come to these meetings, they have a radically different worldview than the vast majority of you sitting on the city council. It is time for new blood on this council, and until that can happen, which is 4 years from now, these city council meetings should be as packed as they are tonight every single time there's a meeting at this council. As someone mentioned earlier, the people on this council need to realize that they work for the people of Michigan City, not the other way around, and I think now, for the first time in a long time, those tides are turning, and I welcome a new day in the city.
Yes, ma'am.
Sandra Presco, 201 Felton Street. I would just like to go on record as stating my displeasure on the development that's being proposed on the Lake Avenue and Felton Street. And also stating that the ordinance 4509 should be deemed invalid for the reasons previously stated, the description being incorrect, people not being properly notified. This is a historic district. We think that the duplexes will not improve our neighborhood at all, that it will draw transient occupants rather than people who would be invested in our neighborhood and in our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, Jane McDonald, 213 Felton Street. I am one of the many neighbors who is displeased with Ordinance 4509. We've written you letters, we've presented ourselves on many occasions, and I reiterate the same concerns that Sandy and Vivian and Ellie have expressed. The property was misrepresented as Blaine Street when it's actually on Lake Avenue. It's completely overburdening our sewer systems, our streets. We're proposing at least 25 additional bathrooms and kitchens in this community when, as Greg stated, we have our sewers rotted out sometimes on a weekly basis or after a major rainstorm. The access and egress is only on Felton Street, which is already overburdened with semi-trailers, and as I've mentioned many times, there are 8 bus runs per day. 4 bus runs, which means that the buses run up and down Felton Street 8 times a day, including in the summers. So for a plethora of reasons, it seemed to be poorly planned, not well thought out, and incongruous with the kind of older architectural, historically significant neighborhood in which we live. So please reconsider, revisit ordinance 4509, and I hope that you will choose to invalidate it. Thank you.
Sarah Zawacki, 1209. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Mary Hervey. I reside at 318 South Park Street, and I'm the owner of Granny's House Christian Family Child Care. And I would just like to ask the committee if there's any way possible to dissolve the TIF fund so that the money can be better utilized for our community, especially in early child care. I have 4 sites in Michigan City, and I stay full. I have to turn down at least 2 to 3 families every week. So there is a dire need for quality, keyword quality, early child care education and education in general, things for our youth to do in the city. And just as a suggestion is that we start with our community parks that we already have here. There's Adams Park, Water Tower Park, Gardenia Park is the only park that's being kept up to par. There is the park at Ames Field. And it's dangerous for our children to play on. If we start with those, there's a lot of other things that can be at our community parks other than just playground equipment. There can be community pools, batting ranges, basketball courts, and sufficient lighting, security, fences, safe things for our children to do. That would take a lot of our children and give them something to do after school during the summer other than being at daycares or at the Y All Day or other camps. A lot of parents can't afford summer camps. They're expensive, just like a lot of parents can't afford quality child care. And a suggestion for that would be to bring in better paying jobs. I have parents that work 12 hours a day at one job and still can't make ends meet. I have parents that work 2 jobs and still can't make ends meet. And their children are with us at our daycare facilities for 12 hours a day. So if we had better paying jobs, maybe better bus service, extended hours to midnight, that the parents could have dependable transportation. A lot of people don't have cars and they, bum their way to work back and forth. But if our bus services ran longer hours, they would have dependable transportation to work because we have monthly vouchers that are available, or they can buy a monthly pass, not a voucher, for the bus services and things of that nature. But I really would like you to look into improving our community parks to provide things for our children to do, not just early childhood, but children of all ages. Thank you.
Well, you guys know how to put on a show with standing room only. So, granted, it's getting a little less now. However, my name is Jeffrey Ortman. I live at 717 Franklin Street. This thing we call a plaza. I think that a very great disservice was made when somebody drew a picture of a plaza, because now everybody decided that that's what it's supposed to look like. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it has to look like. I moved here, having lived in Chicago and New Buffalo and spent a lot of time here for 30 years, because this town was ready to re-embrace and reconnect with its culture, its heritage, its history, its entertainment, and its natural resources. I also believe that all the school programs, the sidewalks, and all of that are extremely important. However, can I remind you, it doesn't mean one or the other. It does not mean one or the other. We need it all. And I agree with the gentleman who said everybody should show up every night. So there's money out there if you squeeze, if you cry, if you beg. And this group, you have listened. That I honor you for, and thank you. And everybody out here spoke their piece, whether or not they're afraid to go home. Anyway, thank you for listening. And remember, we can do it all.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Tony Lee, 5204 Lexington Drive. One of my major concerns is everybody's familiar with the Soul Steppers, correct? And what they have done for the community and how they've involved the children. I spoke to Lynn, and she tells me that the kids have to practice in her basement. Now, $11 million, she wouldn't even need that for a facility where the kids could actually practice. I came to the city building here, and if you go upstairs, we've got all the trophies, we've got her name up there, all the stuff all the recognition she's brought to Michigan City along with the Soul Steppers. But are we investing anything into that in her program? Why are the kids still rehearsing in her basement? So, I mean, if we're going to spend $11 million, let's look at what's working for the city, what's working for the kids and the community, and let's prioritize that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. Molly Kelly, 109 Felton Street. I'm here to support my neighbors who oppose the Blaine Street ordinance. The way that it was done and on the merits, our neighborhood is absolutely saturated with traffic. And I would just ask Councilman Dabney that you know very well that these are our concerns, so please be our advocate and stick up for us when some out-of-town developer comes to town with this type of ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby Fleming, 301 Redpath Ave.
Pardon, ma'am? Can you repeat your address?
301 Redpath Ave.
Thank you.
My issue is I oppose the plaza as well because we need to start fixing the things that we already have here in Michigan City because we still have flooding in our Village Green and in the surrounding neighborhoods because I live over there. We need to get that fixed. Civil Pond didn't do the job that it was planned to fix because every time we get a good rain, it's still flooding over there. And neighborhoods still need sidewalks. Children still need things to do. There's a lot of things that we could do with $11 million besides build something that somebody out in Chicago can come up here and visit us. Let's fix here first because if we don't fix what we have, why should we invite somebody else to our house? Our house is still a mess. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, this guy. It's been an interesting day. I've been online conversations. I've been called a lot of things today online. I think my favorite was Matt Kubik, 3318 Tilden. I think my favorite was I'm a classist piece of shit. Okay, I own that. This has been an interesting night, very educational, and it's extraordinary the eloquence of some of the speakers. I was born in Michigan City, but of course, our careers take us different places. And at the end of my career, I could have gone anywhere. But I chose to come back to Michigan City because of what I saw happening here in the strategies and the development of our and recapturing of our civic heritage, particularly in that there were so many years where and it was mentioned, so many years where there was plan after plan being commissioned and then put on a shelf, and that there was a move, particularly with Mr. Mears' election, to create strategies to actually implement and change things that were happening. Downtown Michigan City 10 years ago was on its way to being Gary, abandoned, empty buildings, storefronts dilapidated, empty lofts. All of that has changed because of the investment that was made possible through the Redevelopment Commission. A city with a dead downtown is dead to the core. So I really abhor this narrative that everything is for the out-of-towners, everything is for the tourists, everything is for the Chicago people. What we've seen is Yeah, it's not been 100% successful so far, but we've seen local businesses who are moved in and are thriving and developing. They are local business people who are making an effort. Yet there are those people in the group here who decry those as being capitalist and hating the poor and not serving the community. I think there's a narrative that's being perpetrated that the neighborhoods are being totally ignored. There's been more money spent in the neighborhoods on infrastructure in the past 7 years than in the entire history of Michigan City. Over $400 million across the whole city. Now, where is it? Well, it's mostly underground. It can't be fixed all at once with these expenditures, but it's been spent on sidewalks, parks, stormwater, drainage infrastructure, all of that for the residents of Michigan City. It is a national disgrace that the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. It is a national disgrace that the national policies of the past 40 years have destroyed the middle class. We are victims of what is our national situation here in Michigan City. Those are national issues. The question is, how do we address those locally? What can we do locally? The challenge is the way in which we as a city can respond creatively to make a livable urban center, an urban core that all of us can enjoy, while at the same time responding to the economic and social needs of the community. We can do both. It's going to take an effort for us to listen to each other and to work together. Unfortunately, there are those in this room, or maybe they're still in the room, whose ideology is that we can't do both, that we can only do it their way. And I don't think that's the way we need to go if we're going to have a coherent, cohesive, mutually supportive city. At many meetings I've attended, I've looked around the room, just as someone did here, and said, where is the cultural and ethnic mix that matches our community? I sat on the Michigan City Strategic Plan Review Committee, and every meeting I said, this committee does not represent the demographics of this community. That is a problem, and that's a problem that we all have to work together to solve. How can we become more inclusive? So, the bottom line is, yeah, I am for the plaza, because I think we can create a place that will serve all of our residents here in Michigan City. It is for us. We've been told that from the beginning. This is a place for Michigan City, to create a place that will serve all of our residents, and we can continue to address all of the other social and economic issues that we're facing in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am?
Amy Straka, 108 Trunk Court. This is not for us. Nothing about us without us is for us, okay? So this plaza is not meant for the regular, everyday residents of Michigan City. When this outreach happened, and I've heard at several different meetings talking about, well, we reached out to people to see what they wanted in the city. We've talked to folks to see what they needed for this plaza. One of the outreach methods that was used was a chalkboard that was hung up during a beer festival that had $60 tickets to attend it, where people had an opportunity to write what they wanted in the plaza in chalk. That was one of the outreach efforts. Meetings at Blue Chip Casino with a PowerPoint slideshow going at 10 o'clock in the morning is one of those outreach efforts. And I went to a lot of those meetings. I went to the Historic Review Board meeting that decided to take those buildings down in favor of it. Back then, I thought that the plaza was going to be a park. It's not. And now they're not exploring this bond. It was taken from the agenda today, that they're going to aggressively look for other forms of ways to fund this plaza, that they're committed to making sure that it happens. But all these other things that the city needs, essential services that folks actually need, where is all that aggressive searching for other funds? Aggressive searching for other grants and ways to fund programs that the city actually needs. Lots of folks have spoken to TIF districts siphoning tax money away from the city budget, which is controlled by elected officials, and putting it into special interest funds that have only one purpose but to raise property taxes, which only benefits property owners in those specific areas and hurts people that rent properties in those areas and hurts folks in the outlying areas as well, and the folks who don't get the essential services they need because those things are not, the money is not placed into the city budget, and there's no ability to actually use it on the essential services that people need. When you ask people in Michigan City what they want, not a chalkboard at a beer festival and ask them to write it up there. They want transportation that is adequate. If we did not have TIF districts that trapped all of our tax money and kept it away from the general budget, we could have bus service, especially to places like Tall Timbers, one of the only affordable places to live in Michigan City that accepts Section 8, which isn't even on the bus route anymore. It's in a plan set for years in the future to put it on the bus route. As a home visitor that works with families who are vulnerable, you have kids walking on no sidewalks, on rural roads, to try to get into town to get on the bus from Tall Timbers. And they're working multiple jobs. You've got people working at Wendy's and Popeyes, walking from Tall Timbers, which is out way far. People want affordable housing. They want affordable housing that's walkable to grocery stores where they have access to healthy food. People want access to affordable childcare. And there are cities that are making steps in the direction of providing things like childcare, providing youth programs, and using their municipal budgets to do that. We can't do that as long as we're segregating our tax money and handing it off to special interest groups to reinvest in themselves. Blue Chip's tax money getting pulled in and then given back to Blue Chip $1 million, just handed to them. Where we continue to do things like this down on the south side, where we have all of these big box businesses that are paying in tons of taxes and trapping it down there, then we're giving tax abatements to places like a Holiday Inn that's paying less than a living wage for part-time jobs that don't provide benefits, and we are paying them to come here. But who does that benefit other than the people building it and the property owners selling the property to them on the hopes that someone might stay here if all the hotels are booked up at South Bend for a Notre Dame game? The point is that we need to change what our priorities are in the city to what is morally right and what is appropriate and what serves the majority of our residents. And that's not little pet projects of development. It's not little pet projects that boost gentrification. By name, it's been in the paper. We need to attract different residents, affluent people. People have owned this. It's not a conspiracy. It's out in the open. It's the purpose of the RDC. We need to put our focus on what does matter, which are the folks in the city and the people whose voices aren't always heard. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Taylor Patz, 213 Walnut Street. I would like to address two issues. One, I am also opposed to the plaza. I think another beautification project similar to what was done at Charles Westcott Park, Michigan Boulevard. I don't think these are the things that really solve issues that current residents of Michigan City are facing. I think it pretties things up, but it doesn't actually do anything. Issues like what Amy has mentioned, transportation, childcare, sidewalks. We have a number of parks in Michigan City already spread around that a lot of people use that are kind of falling apart. Ames Field has a playground that's disgusting, and we draw a lot of attention to Ames Field, and we could spend a fraction of the amount of money improving that. It wouldn't take more than $15,000 tops to turn that thing completely around. Gardena was recently redone, and I liked it the way it was before. We're just kind of throwing money away without actually polling the residents for what they need. And I don't think another pretty project that will be useful for 2.5 months out of the year will solve any of those issues. So I am against the plaza. And my second issue is I'm also against the idea that I've heard recently that condos are going to be going up on the north end near where Dave's Diner, Swingbillies, I forget what it's called now, Arcadia, I believe. I understand that's private property and that it can be sold, but I think there's a lot that could be done with the preservation of lakefront property that could make that a lot more useful for all residents. I think large condominiums down there will cause more infrastructural problems such as lack of parking, lack of transportation, lack of groceries. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Leanne Killingbeck, 218 Dixon Street, South Dixon. I want to say that I am actually for this plaza. I've sat here and I've listened to everybody talk about how this isn't our Michigan City and it isn't for us and the majority of our residents. And I will say I'm born and raised in this community. I've watched this community have nothing downtown, now to a place where people walk around on nice days. They talk to each other. You take your children down there, you say hello. So when we say that these things have no impact on our lives or the way that we live, it does. It does. I would rather take my child to downtown Michigan City to ice skate than I would take him to Valpo to do so. I've worked multiple jobs. I've had nothing. I've had poor housing. I've done all of those things, and I've worked myself into a better position. I hope, and I hear the concerns of everybody that is here. I would just like to encourage everybody to consider the fact that we're all residents of Michigan City. A lot of us that have lived here our whole lives want to see these things happen. We see the positive impact that it has made. We want to continue to live in this community. We want to work in this community. We want to pay taxes in this community. We want to raise our families here in this community. And there's more than just a small segment that is here today to speak out on this project. There's also some of us, too, that appreciate the changes that we're making here. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak?
I just want to say I'm against the plaza. One of the things I believe that I read was that it's going to close off a street.
Name and address
I'm
for
sorry,
the,
Jose Segovia, 521 Pearl Street. I was under the impression it's going to close off one of the streets.
Right.
And I remember what happened with Franklin Square, and that was, yeah, that's not going to help any of those. Mr. Kubik spoke of the small businesses that have gone in. I don't believe that's going to help any of the businesses down there, especially the locally owned small businesses that need to attract people to them.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ann Carver. I live at 2803 and a half Franklin. I've heard a lot of negativity here today. You know, for years I heard people criticize Michigan City because we were not making the kind of progress that New Buffalo has made in attracting tourists and increasing the allure of our community. And I strongly believe that it's the parochial attitude that we have heard expressed by so many here tonight that has prevented us from making that kind of progress and rather maintaining a status quo. And I really must say that I would much prefer to be a part of a community who has open arms to everyone. We welcome everyone. We welcome people from out of town, whether they are rich or they are poor, and we're glad to have them here to enjoy what we are able to enjoy in Michigan City. This is such a wonderful place to live. And now with the art space in downtown Michigan City, which has attracted so many businesses to downtown Michigan City. It has increased the benefit for those few is a benefit for all. The more revenue we bring into Michigan City is more revenue that we each can realize, that each neighborhood can realize, that each special interest can realize, and it can only benefit all of us. My oldest daughter and her husband have recently moved back to Michigan City from Phoenix, Arizona, and they've opened a small business here. And the reason they came was because they saw the progress that's been happening in downtown Michigan City, and were so encouraged by it and so attracted to it that they've come home to us. And I think that Mr. Kubik and I could not be more pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Amy Bowman, 117 Valentine Court. I'm a resident of Michigan City. I'm a mom. I'm a small business owner in downtown. And honestly, I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence. I didn't know all the information about the TIF district monies and how that works, so I've definitely been educated tonight. I agree with the gals and the folk or the guys saying that, you know, all of the parks that we already have are in desperate need of some upgrading. Ames Fields Park in particular, I drive up and down Franklin Street 27,000 times a day, and you know, we're all looking at it, nobody's there utilizing it, it's falling apart. So to, you know, to throw out this $11 million project to build a space in another neighborhood to try and get people to come out of their neighborhoods that they live in where their parks are already at to come downtown, that's asking a lot of people. They should have parks in their neighborhoods, and they, you know, a downtown should be a gathering space, but that was screwed up a long time ago. So trying to fix that is definitely something that needs to happen. I just don't know that, you know, expecting this North End project to benefit everyone in our community. I'm on the fence. I don't know. I just don't know. We have so much beach area, you know, that there's so much going on there. I almost feel like it's a combative effort. You know, we've got all these different organizations trying to do so much, but nobody's doing it together as one cohesive group. Instead, everybody's bickering against everybody, or they all, you know, it's always boggled my mind. Say next month for the first weekend of August, we're asking everybody to come down to the lakefront and enjoy all the spoils of the boats and everything. But at the same time, we're going to also ask you to come be in downtown for the Taste of Michigan City at the same time, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm having a hard time swallowing this pill, and I don't know what the election's going to do. I'm not a political person. I'm just a gal living here trying to, you know, do my thing, which I think all of us are. So I don't know. I'm on the fence, and that's all I wanted to say. So.
All right, thank you very much.
Sergio Gochergan, 1713 Franklin Street. I want to actually talk about the governance, because what we've seen today in the meeting, and you point that out, is that when Aspar was speaking, is that they didn't bring that forth towards the council. Seems like RDC is not going through the city council to make decisions. Police department is not going through the city council to do things they do in the city. So my primary question is, are you guys in power here, or are you gonna let some other developers and people here in the city govern the city, or are you gonna actually take that charge? And relating to the police incident that happened in the city, the issue here is actually that you're placing your officers in danger because you're creating division within our community, and you're placing officers, making them do things that actually violate our civil rights and our Constitution. And me and you had a conversation about that. It's the fact that we want to actually create a better relationship between police officers. And it's funny that when we did talk, it was about the incident with excise police that happened for one of our events. And so my question here, or a statement to you guys, are you in power, or are you just here to kind of be in place and let somebody else to govern our city? And that's pretty disturbing. So you guys have a good day.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak this evening? Anyone else wish to speak this evening?
Sorry, folks. Paul Needhammer, constituent, 125 Lakeshore Drive. I appreciate, Dabney, that you want to get together. I learned a lot today. I'm pro Plaza. I may mention a few things, but there's always a big, and I want to thank the council for the patience. I think if somebody reviews the minutes and figures out all the suggestions and stuff, if those concerns for childcare, youth programs, sidewalks, if instead of just saying no plaza, if you could focus, just list all the items and get workshops, divide and conquer, and do the workshops, the planning. And one thing I appreciate about Mayor Mir is the focus on implementation. And if you can focus on the positive and learn from this big opportunity, the big O. And I think Michigan City, I don't think the people against the plaza are really against the plaza. And the $11 million, that extra 2 or 3 million, that's ancient history. I think what people are against is the RDC trying to reclaim a blighted property that's overpriced or underwater and make it shovel ready for development and stuff. I think Michigan City can use the plaza. I heard it recently. A master's thesis on autonomous architecture and urban planning, how like the plaza, it might apply to the plaza that like an autonomous car takes care of itself. The plaza is there. It's sort of organically, it is open for the whole community to enjoy. It's not really a touristy thing. And I appreciate that the planning and the workshops they had tried to have a, it's not a park. They had a committee and trying to, represent the city, and I appreciate that. And the one great thing is if they close 7th Street, you can get rid of some stop signs on Washington and Pine because it's not a through street anymore, and you can have faster traffic. So with that, I'll pass. Thanks everybody and I really appreciate the community activism and stuff to show up, and thanks again.
Hi, Matt Waters, 108 Trunk Corp. I am against the plaza, and the reason why is I really feel like these Rapid City meetings that were coming in and pushing it are the pre-constructed reasons that they're pushing an idea that they have ready to go already, and they're pushing it. It's not something that Michigan City needs. They don't know the needs of our community. For example, we need grocery stores. Dollar General will push real hard to get into communities. You see a Dollar General every 2 or 3 blocks because people need, supplies. What does Dollar General not have though? Lettuce, tomatoes, produce, things that people need. Do we have communities in Michigan City where needs are not being pushed? Yeah, we definitely do. And what we see is, people with power, people with money, pushing really hard to get into Michigan City and push this idea of something we don't need. Sure, it might be a great facility for, people to play and do ice bumper cars and do skating or whatever it is, but there are needs that need to be met. I teach high school econ, and we look at multipliers. What's best for the community? The thing that has the highest multiplier is always welfare. It causes people to have money, to function in their life, spend money in the community, spend money on things that we fundamentally believe that they should be spending money on, lettuce, tomatoes, things that the grocery store offers, not the things that Dollar General offers.
Anyone else wish to speak this evening? Anyone else wish to speak this evening? Anyone else wish to speak this evening? There has to be one more person that wants to say something. No? Okay. Public comment period is now closed. And comments from the council? Councilman
President.
Dietry?
This letter appeared in Facebook. I don't have Facebook. I'm not a Facebook person, but my wife is, and someone else sent this. And I read it today, and I was inspired by it. And I called the people who wrote the letter initially and asked if they would mind if I read it tonight, and they said no, they wouldn't. It's not a very long letter, but I think it's important for us to hear, and I wish everyone was still here because they need to hear this too. My husband and I have just celebrated our 3-year anniversary of our return to Michigan City. I just wanted to say thank you, Michigan City. Coming home was the best decision we've ever made. There's some that hold the negative opinion that the development of Michigan City, especially improvements in the uptown or the building of new hotels, etc., only help the rich and cater to tourists. For us, this could not be further from the truth. In fact, these improvements in the culture of positivity and progress is exactly why we made the decision to move home and reinvest in our own community. John and I are both from Michigan City. We're graduates of Rogers and Michigan City High School. After college, we moved away for a year, long enough to know that there was no life for us in Michigan City. It was 2003, and we said anywhere but here. We moved to Phoenix, Arizona. It was a blast. We did a lot of growing. We found our careers. We married. We started a family. John became a neon and glass artist, and I a special ed teacher. In 2010, we began to come back to Michigan City during the summers so that John could participate in art festivals and markets in Chicago and throughout the region. While there was little money to be made in town, he did well in the area and we loved being home. Fast forward a few years. Wow, we watched Michigan City come alive. It was like leaving a baby, and when you visit again, you have a teenager in front of you. Still a bit awkward, room for improvement, but the potential was so obvious. In a short amount of time, Michigan City was becoming a place where we could make money selling art, and it was all because of the development of the uptown and the city's push toward making Michigan City a destination of art and culture. In 2016, we took the leap and moved back home full time. We could have gone anywhere, but we were enthused by the progress in our hometown, and we wanted to be a part of the momentum. We saw the great potential and saw nothing but opportunity. Feeling a bit disconnected in such a big city, we were eager to be a part of a community that we could help shape. We wanted to give our children the Michigan City experience we had, but better. Our art gallery, the Rising Phoenix Gallery, has been open for 2 years now. We are so thrilled with it. We support only local and regional artists that we work very hard to promote, and it's working. This place that we once had to flee is now supporting us and many others. We have been so embraced by the local community, encouraged by the city. We are grateful for the out-of-towners and the tourists as well. We are not rich. We did not go to Arizona and make a fortune. In fact, far from it. We had a little ranch-style home that needed work, but because property values were so much more affordable, we were able to purchase our gallery. We've had opportunities here in little old Michigan City that we would never have had anywhere else. Our children are thriving. There are so many free and inexpensive enriching programs and activities for youth here in Michigan City, and unlike Phoenix, they are accessible. There is always room for progress and growth. Our best can always be better, but the beauty of a small town, and one that is focused on growth and improving, is that it's easy to become involved. If I see something that I think needs improvement, I get to work. Monday mornings, beach cleanup. Let's go. This misconception that city officials are catering to the Michigan City elite and only care about uptown and tourists is dangerous and divisive. I'm highly suspicious of the true motives of those who are working so aggressively to divide our city by socioeconomic class and race. Do not fall into a trap of one-sided misinformation and negativity. It is the steadfast dedication to progress, a forward-thinking vision, a culture of positivity, inclusive growth, and opportunity that brought me home and the reason I want to stay. We are all in this together, and Michigan City is stronger when we work together and support each other. There is no place like home. What a refreshing breath of fresh air. We need more people like John and Nora Riska in Michigan City to combat what I am seeing more and more of what Spiro Agnew, the vice president for Richard Nixon, said, the nattering nabobs of negativism. Thank you.
Any other council comments? Councilman Stimley?
First of all, I want to thank the members of the audience that came out tonight, and I always welcome community input on issues. Some of the questions I heard tonight too was with the tree canopy, with the not appropriating any money for it. We did appropriate $50,000 this year to enhance the tree canopy. One of the problems that we faced with that is for various reasons we went through 3 foresters this year. And every time the tree board tries to put something together, or myself, we have to go through the process once again. So I just want to clear that up. And when it comes to youth programs, we do run a junior society board at the Washington Park Zoo, which they're always welcome to come out and do that. We're currently working on 2 other youth programs with city and city officials, which I don't want to get into right now, but they'll be coming out in the next month or 2. So I just want to clear that up, and like I said, I know I can't speak for all members of the council, but I know a few of them that since I've been on the past year and a half, I know we've always been stressing sidewalks and the South Franklin Street and trying to get that done too. So we are working on these issues, and like I said, I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Any other council comments? Well, you going to make a motion to adjourn? Okay, I have a couple comments before you do that. First thing I'd like to respond to is that I know it was mentioned as far as the tax abatement or the Holiday Inn Express on the south end of town, and I just want to let you know that I was the only council person that voted against that tax abatement, because I can tell you right now they're paying people $8.50 an hour, paying managers $10 an hour to work out there, so I couldn't see that benefit to Michigan City. The other thing, because the council will not have the chance right now to vote on the plaza, so I want to express my opinions on the plaza. First, going back to the redevelopment commission meeting that took place a week ago Monday, is that they had public discussion and input for the plaza. I know there were 8 people here that talked, not for the plaza. Could have been a couple that did speak for the plaza. But then the redevelopment, and I had to leave then for another appointment. But anyway, I left at 6:30, and then after that, they took the vote for the plaza. Well, the redevelopment commission voted to pass this on, the bonding, to the city council on a 3-to-1 vote, so that the council would have the opportunity to vote on it this evening, whether we want to finance the plaza or not. And I don't know what the other council members feel as far as the plaza goes. But then on Tuesday, and Councilman Beatry has the right to do whatever he wants with the resolution, ordinance, what have you. So he pulled his sponsorship from that. And so from Monday night of a 3-1 vote with the redevelopment commission, you know, what happened in 15 hours that all of a sudden now we're pulling the support and the resolution dies. Well, then it doesn't, then I read in the paper, well, basically we don't need the city council. We don't need the bonding. We're going to go out and get the money on our own. Well, if that could have happened, then why didn't the redevelopment commission go out and get the money on their own to begin with instead of going through this process? Being a city council member, I kind of feel slighted that we didn't have the opportunity to vote on this plaza with all the public input this evening. I think, you know, we are the elected officials of Michigan City, that we should have the opportunity to say yay or nay, this should go forward. And as someone mentioned, well, the redevelopment commission seems to have more power than the city council. Well, I'll tell you what, sitting here as a city councilman, sometimes that's the way I feel, that they just circumvent the city council and do what they want to do. And I don't think that that's right. But by law, they can do that. There's nothing you can do with that. Well, let me just comment on the plaza. I'm not totally against the plaza, but I'm not totally for it yet, because there's some issues that I have with the administration of it and how on an annual basis, well, first of all, it's too much. The $8 million is too much to spend on a plaza. I believe Michigan City needs to start at a lower pace, a lower amount of money, and pay lower interest, and start from there and then grow. Just like the lady that was here from LaPorte this evening, she stated the same case. They started small and they grew, and it's a nice plaza. I've never been there, but you know, she lives in LaPorte, so that's the way she's describing it. I think Michigan City needs to scale back, because the folks I have spoken to, and people come up to me day and night and they want to talk about the plaza. The first thing they say, it's too expensive. What do we need $8 million for? And then the other $3 million that was added on to this as interest was not brought up to the public during all these meetings that we were having, until there was a meeting with the Common Council and a workshop that we had with Craig Phillips and the Redevelopment Commission. And I had to go and ask Andy Mouser, who was here this evening, what is the total cost of this going to be? And he told me the interest is going to be $3 million, so you got a total of 11. So then finally at the Redevelopment Commission meeting, I asked that question again, and they said, yeah, it's not 8, it's 11. Well, then why don't you tell the public it's 11 and not 8? And $3 million over a 20-year bond is a lot of money. You know, I don't have the math in front of me right now. You're talking millions of dollars. So it was always my idea to start out small, cut the cost, and then work from there. And every time I asked that question, and every time I asked committee members on that committee, or these different side committees, why we have to go so big, because that's what they're telling us to do, Don. We have to go big. The only one who's telling you that is a consultant that you're paying for from Rapid City, South Dakota, or from Chicago, or from Illinois. Those are the folks that are telling you that. You know, we're smart people here in Michigan City. We know how big that piece of property is and how we want to do it. you know, people are sitting here this evening going, we don't need to spend 11 million. We need this, we need that. And that's where it's at. You don't need to spend 11. Take that money, you can take some of it and use it elsewhere in the TIF district or North End to fix sidewalks, to do this, to do that, you know, and do it, you know, there's a multitude of projects you could do. So that's one heartburn I have with the plaza. The second heartburn is the way I've been told is that who's ever the manager of this plaza is going to have to go out as their assignment on an annual basis into the public and raise over $500,000, $450,000 to $500,000 on an annual basis, go out in the community and raise that money because you're a non-for-profit. So now what you're doing is you're taking this $500,000 out of the business sector that other non-for-profits are trying to get. I'm talking about the Salvation Army. I'm talking about United Way. I'm talking about food pantries. We're talking about these shelters for the homeless people we got all over town. So what are we doing? We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I don't think, personally, from an ethical standpoint, and from a personal standpoint, I don't think that's right. I do not think that that's right. So those are my issues with the plaza. I think it's a good idea for the downtown area. I think it's a good idea for the community as a whole, as a gathering place, because I like to go out and do things, and I know that they'll have a lot of activities there. But I don't think we need to start out big, and I think that's the big rub in the community, that we're starting out way too big for $11 million instead of starting out smaller for a smaller price tag. And that's where I stand right now. So am I for it? Somewhat. Am I totally for it? 100%? Where I would go tomorrow morning and vote on it? No. With that being said,
motion adjourned. Aye.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.